Chapter 468. The Black Mountain Phantom seemed as if it could prop up the entire heavens. Even though it was separated by an endless distance, one could still clearly feel the terrifying, oppressive pressure it emitted. This was an oppressive and despairing aura that could only be produced when mountains and rivers were overturned, when the heavens and earth were collapsing. At this time on this mountain, two giant beasts were fighting each other. Their angry roars were like 3,000 claps of thunder. Rubble flew everywhere, and it was as if the sun, moon, and stars were falling. Every drop of blood was like a lake of blood that smashed into the ground with a rumbling sound. Frightened by the battle between the two giant beasts, the monster beasts that lived in the mountain range fled in all directions. Even though their bodies were much smaller, even the weakest monster beast was tens of thousands of feet tall. Suddenly, with a heaven-shaking explosion, the Black Mountain Phantom shattered. Countless fleeing monster beasts were smashed into meat paste by flying boulders. The Black Mountain Phantom fiercely turned its head and opened its mouth, instantly swallowing up the two giant beasts that were fighting. The sound of chewing could topple mountains and overturn seas. Blood dripped from the corners of its mouth, like a river of stars toppling over from the highest heavens. It roared into the earth, forming a sea of blood in the blink of an eye. The Black Mountain Phantom lay down on the ground once more. With a heaven-shaking explosion, the entire world trembled. Countless terrifying canyons crazily spread out in all directions. But soon, the earth that was torn apart began to wriggle and restore itself to how it was in the beginning. The Black Mountain Phantom that lay on the ground began to secrete a layer of mucus. As this mucus came into contact with the air, it condensed into thick rocks. Wild winds swept up countless ancient trees, even uprooting them. Then they were twisted into powder that sprinkled onto the surface of the Black Mountain Phantom. Then these ancient trees began to germinate at a speed visible to the naked eye. They turned into thick saplings that wildly absorbed nutrients and wildly grew. Perhaps in just several days, this place would return to how it was in the beginning. The surging river was like a moving sea. Terrifying willow trees that were hundreds of thousands of feet tall and emitted a radiant divine light relied on their incomparably thick roots to drill deep into the earth, anchoring their bodies to the banks of the river. But today, these incomparably sturdy and terrifying willow trees were easily smashed apart by the waves of water. They were even uprooted from the banks of the river, leaving behind terrifying pits that were hundreds of miles wide. In the next instant, these pits were filled up by the river water. A huge golden fish was swimming in the long river. It was so huge that the river water couldn't even completely submerge its body. The fins on its back seemed to be made of pure gold, and under the illumination of the light, they reflected billions of rays of divine light. Every time the large fish's body swayed, the entire river would release a pained gasp, and then it would stir up raging waves that could destroy everything. The river in front of them suddenly narrowed, and the big fish that were barely able to pass through were blocked. A roar came from the water, and a terrifying whirlpool appeared, sucking up all the water in the river. The surging river was cut in half at this moment, revealing the head of the golden fish. It was a majestic dragon's head, and its golden eyes were cold, shining with endless nobility and majesty. It opened its mouth and sucked in the river water, turning it into a column of water that shot out. The earth trembled, and the narrow river was directly smashed apart. The golden fish hid underwater. It wagged its tail and continued forwards, not caring at all that the river had been torn apart. Endless river water roared out, instantly submerging 1,000 miles. After entering this different world for half a day, Chinyu's outlook on life had been completely refreshed. This was simply a land of divinity and demons that had been magnified 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times. This magnification referred to everything that existed in this world. Had he seen ants that were dozens of feet long, toads that were 1,000 feet long, birds that were 10,000 feet long, or wild boars that were 100,000 feet long. Here, they could be found everywhere. Qin Yu had even seen a terrifying giant ape that carried 3 heads on its shoulders. Its feet stepped on a mountain range. Its head stretched into the heavens, and half of its body was hidden in the clouds. Every breath it took had the momentum of wind and thunder. Luckily, Qin Yu's tiny divine sense was like a grain of sand in the Ganges River. In addition, whenever he saw a bad situation, he would run away, so he was just barely able to survive until now. But the problem was that luck couldn't be relied on. Perhaps a sudden accident could send him beyond redemption. This accident could be the sudden gasp of a giant beast, or even an ant that suddenly developed a desire to hunt. In short, Qin Yu didn't want to stay in this world for even a second longer. This sort of environment where death could be lurking around every corner was enough to leave one in despair. But there was still no trace of the souls of nothingness. This left Qin Yu restless, because according to the records of the monster raising mystic art, the souls of nothingness should be as common as carp in a river. They could exist in any corner of this world, and as long as one's luck wasn't too bad, they could be quickly found. This sort of soul of nothingness didn't have any offensive ability. As long as one approached, they could be captured, and then they could stimulate the power of the soul, leading Alter to leave this world. Half a day passed. By relying on the speed of his divine sense, Qin Yu crossed an inconceivably vast territory. But he still didn't find a single soul of nothingness. This clearly wasn't right. Just what happened? Qin Yu whispered to himself, a look of anxiety in his eyes. The strength of the soul leading Alter could only be maintained for a single day. In other words, if he couldn't find a soul of nothingness in the next half a day, he would have to leave. Once he left, his divine sense's aura would be marked by the will of this different world. If he tried to come here again, he would be erased by the worlds well before his divine sense could enter. This was why it was said that every person only had a single chance to enter this different world. If they failed, it would be impossible for them to complete the soul summoning bell's recognition process. Rumble, rumble. A terrifying explosion spread out. Qin Yu's complexion changed. His divine sense instantly swept away, avoiding an eagle that flew over his head. This eagle had pure white feathers, and its wings blocked out the skies. Perhaps the legendary rock referred to this sort of life form. It fled far away before Qin Yu's divine sense came to a stop. He bitterly smiled. This terrifying eagle might not care about his existence at all, but the strong wind stirred up by the flapping of its wings could easily tear his divine sense to shreds. This wasn't a supernatural ability. Rather, when its wings flapped, it naturally stirred up strong winds. Because the strength surpassed the limit, there was a qualitative change that could still destroy divine sense. Suddenly, a shrill cry echoed out from the distance. Qin Yu looked up, and his pupils shrank, endless shock filling his face. He saw that the incomparably handsome giant white eagle that was shaped like a rock had its body pierced through by a sharp thorn. It frantically flapped its wings in panic, but it couldn't escape the shackles of the sharp thorn. With a mournful cry, the giant white eagle's massive body was mercilessly pulled towards the ground. There was a heaven-shaking rumble in the distance, followed by the sound of food being eaten. Qin Yu paled. Although he hadn't been in this different world for long, he had gained some experience. This giant white eagle had cultivated to a high level. Even in this terrifying different world, it could be considered an extremely tyrannical existence. But it hadn't been able to resist at all. It had been killed by a sharp thorn and swallowed up, according to Qin Yu's understanding of this world. The more tyrannical a creature was, the larger it was. To be able to easily kill a giant white eagle, Qin Yu's divine sense shivered. A feeling of extreme fear gushed out from the depths of his heart. He wanted to flee, but at this time a boundless aura erupted from the depths of the earth. Beneath this aura, his divine sense froze, and he couldn't even think. Soon after, the earth beneath him shattered. a black mountain peak rose up from the ground, lifting Chinyu into the heavens. A halo of light appeared, blocking out all the strong winds. The terrifying pressure that Chinyu felt with his divine sense disappeared. After regaining his ability to move, Chinyu looked around. His mouth fell open, his mind rumbling as he fell into a complete blank. Countless black spots spread out in all directions, as uneven as hills. But the true appearance of these hills was actually layers upon layers of scales. He was now standing on the back of an incomparably massive spider. It had awoken from its deep slumber, its 8 massive limbs tearing through the earth. He didn't know if there were any larger creatures in this different world, but the spider beneath him was the most terrifying existence he had seen so far. Even the 3-headed ape on its shoulder, or the giant golden fish swimming along the river, were nothing but unremarkable little brothers in front of it. A single limb was enough to skewer 10 of them together. Its compound eyes were densely packed, flickering with a cold luster of intelligence like neatly arranged stars. After determining the direction, the terrifying spider moved its limbs, leaving a series of bottomless holes on the ground as it moved away at an astonishing speed. Majestic mountain ranges and surging rivers flashed beneath its belly, unable to obstruct it in the slightest. Countless powerful monster beasts fled into the distance in panic. There was even a pangolin that was millions of feet long that screamed as it drilled deep into the earth. But soon after, a limb pierced into the earth. With a pained roar, the escaping pangolin was pulled out. It opened its jaws to reveal countless sharp fangs. It turned its head and bit down on the limb that had pierced through its back. There was a grating sound like stars colliding with each other, causing countless clouds of fire to splash out. Teeth fell to the ground, but none of them were able to cause any damage to the spider's limb. The limb was pulled back. The spider's eyes were cold and indifferent. Its jaws parted to the sides, revealing a mouth so deep that it seemed to lead straight to hell. Rows of sharp fangs wildly spun as its muscles moved. The entire pangolin was swallowed. As it swallowed, one could clearly hear the sound of flesh and blood being ground to pieces. It was deep and heavy, like the beating of a 100,000-foot drum. Chinyu's divine sense instinctively shivered. This terrifying spider's strength had already broken through the horizon. He tried to escape, but although the halo was only a thin layer, its defensive strength was extremely terrifying. Even when he used all of his strength, he couldn't shake it in the least. Unless he galvanized the strength of the soul leading altar and directly left this world, there was no chance of him escaping. Chinyu's eyes darkened and his thoughts raced. Once he left, it would be impossible for the soul summoning bell to recognize him as its master again. No. He forcefully suppressed the fear in his heart and decided to wait for a chance. Perhaps he would soon find a chance to escape. Unfortunately, Chinyu didn't know that when the spider activated its protective strength, it meant that it was about to fight, and only an existence of the same level could cause it to be so cautious. 2 hours later, Chinyu finally saw the spider's opponent today. In the boundless sea region, this was a true sea, the sea of a different world. It was vast and endless, like the vault of heaven of the world above his head. A giant purple dragon lay there. Its body was so majestic that not even the seawater could submerge it. Its icy cold eyes stared at the spider that was rumbling towards it from the ends of the earth, as if it had been waiting here for a long time. Chinyu's eyes widened. It wasn't that he feared this dragon's aura, but that he discovered that this giant purple dragon was actually composed of countless tiny individuals. Of course, this so-called tiny was only relatively speaking. Each of them was 10 feet in size, and they were like purple jellyfish. The tentacles on their abdomens twisted together, forming a giant purple dragon. At this moment, Chinyu finally understood why he hadn't found a single soul of nothingness even after entering this different world for half a day. It was because they were all gathered here, that's right, This incomparably majestic purple dragon in front of him was composed of trillions of souls of nothingness. Roar! The spider emitted an angry roar. The billowing sound waves turned into a tangible impact that swept out in all directions. Space collapsed and the earth shook. Great waves rose up in the boundless sea region. The eyes of the giant purple dragon, formed from tens of thousands of souls of nothingness, didn't contain the least bit of fear. It fiercely looked up and let out a resonant dragon roar. Chapter 469. The spider's eyes lit up like two burning suns. The imprisoning strength that had vanished reappeared, suppressing Chinyu's divine sense to its scales so that he couldn't move at all. But this didn't stop him from witnessing the heaven-shaking collision that followed. He saw the spider lift a leg. Like a spear of a demon god from the highest heavens, it thrust into the sea surface and nailed the dragon roar that tore apart the sea. The world fell silent. All fluctuations vanished. Time, space, light, darkness at this moment, everything lost all meaning. It seemed like only a breath of time passed, but also like a long samsara. Then this tranquility shattered and the sea surface exploded. Endless seawater shot into the skies, revealing the seabed covered with black reefs. Every drop of seawater contained an annihilating strength. They roared out in all directions, crushing all obstacles in their way. After being eroded by the waves for billions of years, the firm shorelines of a planet were as fragile as tofu. They were instantly torn apart. With just a single wave, the earth for thousands of miles collapsed. Then it was filled with seawater, becoming a part of the sea. What followed soon after was a second and third wave. The tumbling seawater roared, crashing towards the earth. 5,000 miles, 10,000 miles, 30,000 miles, 100,000 miles. When the waves gradually subsided, the 100,000 miles of land that extended from the sea had turned into a kingdom of water. The spider's 8 massive legs supported its body. It stood in the sea, not shivering at all no matter how much seawater crashed against it. It stubbornly stared at the purple dragon, its eyes filled with icy killing intent. Its roar was like a million peals of thunder. It opened its jaws wide and spat out a black net. This net was inconceivably large. It covered the entire skies, and on the surface of the seemingly tiny lines, black light flowed about, covering the purple dragon. The purple dragon lifted its claws. But at this time, the billowing waves that rushed deep into the sea were suddenly cut in half. A terrifying tentacle drilled out, seeming as if it could twist apart the stars above. Roar! With a loud roar, the purple dragon's body instantly split in two. One shot into the skies to meet the black net, and the other turned and plunged deep into the sea. As soon as the intense battle began, it entered a white-hot state of life and death. The purple dragon fell into the black net. It tore apart countless threads of the net, but in the blink of an eye it repaired itself. The battle in the depths of the sea was much more intense. The giant octopus with hundreds of terrifying tentacles had entangled the giant purple dragon. The two of them tumbled in the deep sea, causing the sea that had just calmed down to boil again. Chinyu's divine sense was imprisoned on the surface of the spider's scales. As it moved at high speeds, he wasn't able to see the entire battlefield, but he was able to occasionally capture images of the giant purple dragon fighting one against two, and it didn't seem to be at a disadvantage. However, this balance did not last for long. A fourth terrifying giant beast appeared in the sky. If the giant white eagle that was killed by the spider was said to be in existence comparable to the Kuinpeng, whose wings could cover the sky, then the bird in front of him was as boundless as the sea of stars. Looking at it with the naked eye, its body was even more terrifying than the spider beneath Chinyu's feet. Its wings spread out, reaching as far as the eye could see. A golden eye peeked out from the clouds, locking onto the giant purple dragon. As for the spider that controlled the giant net and fought with the giant purple dragon, a trace of dread appeared in its eyes. It lifted up its legs and fell back down, retreating far away. The giant octopus in the deep sea emitted an angry roar, as if there was some sort of grudge between it and this terrifying bird. But whether it was the spider or the octopus, neither of them were able to cause the bird to shift its gaze at all. It stared at the giant purple dragon, its eyes gradually turning blazing hot. Roar! The two giant purple dragons roared together, their voices filled with anger and unwillingness. It was clear that it knew that it was impossible to resist three existences at the top of the food chain with its strength alone. This attempt failed again. It couldn't wait any longer. Otherwise, it wouldn't be long before the fourth great beast arrived. At that time, its chances of escaping would be greatly reduced. Bang, bang, the two enormous purple dragons self-detonated at the same time. Their shattered bodies tumbled in midair, wriggling as they transformed into purple dragons of various sizes, which roared and fled in all directions. The giant black net shattered, and two thick tentacles of the giant octopus were blown off. But joy appeared in the eyes of the spider and octopus. They opened their great mouths and sucked in. Immediately, countless purple dragons fell into their mouths. This was because the reason they had hunted the giant purple dragons with all their strength today was to wait for this moment. The giant bird, circling above them, didn't join in the struggle. Its sun-like eyes locked onto the entire sea region, searching for its target. The giant bird was confident that under its divine eyes, it wouldn't allow it to escape. But as time passed, it didn't obtain any harvests. Instead, after the spider and octopus swallowed a massive number of purple dragons, their auras became even more terrifying. It was clear they had obtained tremendous benefits. A sharp cry sounded out, transmitting an unquestionable will. The spider and octopus paused in their eating motions and immediately emitted angry roars, as if they were resisting. The giant bird's eyes revealed an icy chill. Then, a brilliant divine light erupted. It fiercely flapped its wings, and the giant octopus in the deep sea was sent flying away. Several bottomless wounds appeared on the surface of its giant body. Even though its flesh and blood wriggled and rapidly regenerated, the blood that gushed out still dyed the sea red. The spider screeched. It lifted its two limbs and crossed them over its head. But in the next moment, its body sank down and its indestructible limbs broke off, causing a massive amount of yellow mucus to flow out. However, this mucus didn't fall into the sea. As it came into contact with the air, it rapidly condensed and turned into two new limbs. The octopus opened its mouth. This time, it didn't spit out a giant net, but a terrifying spike formed from countless tiny spikes that wove together. This spike shot straight towards the giant bird's abdomen. In the deep sea, the giant octopus's abdomen swelled up and then collapsed. Endless toxic black ink shot into the skies, raining down on the giant bird. It was clear that in the face of an even more powerful existence, the two great beasts had chosen to join forces. With an angry cry, the giant bird flapped its wings. Winds and clouds tumbled backwards, and strong heavenly winds descended from the highest heavens. All of the black ink was swept away by the winds. Then a sharp claw shot out, grabbing onto the spike that the spider had spat out and forcefully pulling it out. From the spider's mouth came a pained howl. A giant organ that looked like a nest was pulled out from its body. Blood gushed out from its mouth, and it staggered. Its 8 giant limbs crazily fell down as it fled into the distance in a sorry state. The giant octopus in the deep sea had already dove deep into the sea before this happened. The giant bird angrily cried out. As it saw that it couldn't chase after the giant octopus, it spat out golden flames from its eyes, striking the fleeing spider. Qin Yu's eyes widened. As he looked at the golden flames that swept towards him, his eyes filled with fear. He didn't doubt that the strength of these flames could directly burn his divine sense into nothingness. The spider screeched, as if it could feel the approaching danger. Qin Yu stuffily coughed. He felt his divine sense being crushed by the suppressive strength. Luckily, this process only lasted for a brief moment. The halo of light that covered the spider's body lasted for a breath of time before it was shattered. Flesh and blood flew into the air. Countless pieces of scales fell into the deep sea like fragments of stars falling from the starry skies. Qin Yu's divine sense felt as if it was being cut by knives. He stared helplessly at the increasingly approaching sea surface, fear and alarm in his eyes. The scale he was standing on had a piece of flesh attached to it. It was like a small island, and the collision that occurred when he fell into the sea was enough to pulverize his divine sense. Bitterness and unwillingness appeared in Qin Yu's eyes. But without hesitation, he activated the strength of the soul-leading altar. A faint tremor appeared all around him. At this time, not too far away, a purple dragon that was running away revealed a look of shock and joy. It turned around and flew straight towards Qin Yu. When it was still some distance away, the purple dragon disintegrated, turning into countless souls of nothingness that fled in all directions. One of these souls of nothingness hurtled straight towards Qin Yu. Qin Yu's eyes widened. After a brief moment of astonishment, he was overjoyed. Looking at the approaching soul of nothingness, he quickly lifted a hand. A wisp of divine sense flew out, smoothly fusing into the soul of nothingness. Then, in the next moment, a rich golden light erupted from the soul of nothingness. It was like a sun had leapt out of the sea. Qin Yu's eyes widened. He thought this was bad. In the skies above his head, a heaven-shaking roar of anger echoed out. The great bird's eyes were filled with anger. It fiercely flapped its wings, and the heaven and earth spiritual strength in the air rapidly contracted towards a single point. And the core of this force was Qin Yu, looking up at the terrifying great bird in the skies. Qin Yu's eyes were filled with awe. This was a level of strength that he had never even touched upon. But there wasn't much fear on his face. This was because the strength of the soul-leading altar had already erupted. The space around Qin Yu's divine sense slightly twisted. It completely ignored the gathering heaven and earth spiritual strength and vanished from sight. The strength of the soul-leading altar used a loophole in the world's rules. As long as one was within the rules, it was impossible to stop it. The great bird's eyes widened with disbelief. After several breaths of time, it finally reacted. The thing it had chased after for so long had actually been taken away by something weaker than an ant. Its angry screams spread through 1,000,000,000,000 miles of land. The entire sea began to seethe with waves that rose to the heavens. This was more than enough to prove just how angry the great bird was. After the distortion in front of him was restored once more, Qin Yu discovered that he had escaped from that terrifying different world and was rapidly shuttling through the sea of stars. Before he could sigh over his narrow escape from death, Qin Yu hurriedly searched around with his divine sense. When he discovered the slumbering soul of nothingness, his heart relaxed. He never imagined that he would be able to obtain a soul of nothingness at the last moment. This was truly a stroke of luck. Moreover, the color of this soul of nothingness was a resplendent gold. Qin Yu's eyes flashed from the great bird's reaction. It wasn't hard to speculate that this golden soul of nothingness should be its goal. Although he didn't know what this golden soul of nothingness represented, it was clearly something good. Qin Yu had complete faith in the great bird's judgment. Suddenly, a violent tremor spread out, awakening Qin Yu from his excitement. In the sea of stars, there were countless pitch-black regions, like the gaping maws of monsters. He already knew of this, but now these pitch-black regions seemed to have a great interest in him, as if they wanted to swallow him up. The reason the strength that wrapped around him trembled just now was because of the swallowing strength emitted from these pitch-black regions. Although he had successfully broken free, Qin Yu discovered that his speed had slowed down. It was clear that resisting the swallowing strength of the pitch-black star field had caused him to lose some strength. Golden soul of nothingness. Qin Yu's eyes were dignified. Everything had been smooth the entire time, but now there was a sudden change. It could only be because of this. Just what was this golden soul of nothingness that it could cause even the starry skies to give birth to a desire for it? Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed these thoughts. The most important thing right now was that the following journey would be the existence of the pitch-black star field. A single swallowing would cause his speed to slow down. If this happened multiple times, it might even cause the soul-leading altar to exhaust all of its strength. The consequences were self-evident. Qin Yu fiercely clenched his teeth. He had obtained this golden soul of nothingness through a tremendous stroke of luck, so he couldn't easily give it up. Unless it was the last moment, he wouldn't let go. Reality proved that Qin Yu's worries weren't unnecessary. On the way back, every pitch-black star field they passed would release a swallowing strength towards the golden soul of nothingness. Luckily, they were far away. The soul-leading altar's strength constantly trembled and eventually broke free. Whoosh! His divine sense entered the brightly colored channel. Qin Yu's taut heart relaxed. It was only now that he was safe. Soon, he would be able to return to the land of divinity and demons. The ancient blue soul-leading altar violently trembled. Cracks appeared on its surface. It was clear that its strength was nearly exhausted. Kacha! With a light sound, a chain reaction was triggered. The soul-leading altar began to disintegrate inch by inch. The 36 soul treasures that formed it simultaneously turned to powder. On the ground, Qin Yu's body shook. His eyes shot open, and he gasped for breath, his eyes filled with joy. Just a little bit more, just a little bit more. When the brightly colored channel shattered, his divine sense had staggered out. If he had been any slower, only the heavens knew what the result would have been. Chapter 470. The Black Mountain Phantom was in an extremely unstable state. The slumbering, purple-back blue wing ant had blood-red lines appear on its body, and it would twitch from time to time. The monster ancestors could awaken at any moment. Qin Yu didn't care about the weariness of his soul. He suppressed his excited mood, and his thoughts turned. The worn-out soul summoning bell appeared. In the next moment, the slumbering golden soul of nothingness flew towards the soul summoning bell on its own, without needing to be stimulated. As it approached, the soul of nothingness constantly shrank until it turned into a grain of light that fused into the soul summoning bell. Everything went smoothly. Before Qin Yu could even react, the process of recognizing a master seemed to have already been completed. The golden soul of nothingness was different from what was recorded in the monster-raising mystic art. Qin Yu subconsciously slowed his breathing and stared at the soul-summoning bell floating in front of him. Time slowly passed. The bell remained silent the entire time, without any change occurring. This caused Qin Yu's complexion to darken. Could it be that the golden soul of nothingness didn't meet the requirements to recognize a master? Suddenly, the soul-summoning bell gently trembled. At first it was light, but soon it became intense. One could see the rust on the soul-summoning bell rapidly falling off as traces of gold appeared on its surface. However, because the soul-summoning bell was heavily damaged, the flow of golden light was clearly sluggish. But compared to before, it had become far more dazzling. Qin Yu was overjoyed. He reached out a hand to grab it, but then a young and tender voice sounded out, "Take off your stinky hands. Don't touch me." Unfortunately, it was unable to display the threat it should have. Whoosh! The soul-summoning bell drew back, creating some distance between it and Qin Yu. Its eyes widened in astonishment. But before it could understand what was happening, the young and tender voice sounded out once more, this time even sharper and grating. "You scoundrel! You lecher! You shameless bastard! What are you looking at? I'm not wearing any clothes." His nose turned sour and his eyebrows tightened. Tears flowed down his cheeks uncontrollably. Then a golden light erupted. When Qin Yu finally recovered his vision, the soul-summoning bell had vanished from sight. What appeared in front of him was a golden-haired little girl wearing a golden bubble dress. She looked to be around 5 or 6 years old, and at this time her chubby cheeks were puffed up and her eyes were fierce. What the hell was this? It was completely different from what was recorded in the monster-raising mystic art. The little girl looked at Qin Yu's stunned expression and lightly snorted. She arrogantly said, "Brat, I will give you a chance to turn over a new leaf. Become my servant and serve me with pious devotion. Perhaps I can pardon you for blaspheming against me." She widened her eyes and gritted her teeth. "Otherwise, just the fact that you're spying on me is enough to send you to the fire execution platform and burn you to ashes in the raging flames." Qin Yu took a deep breath. His thoughts raced and his complexion became strange. "You are the soul-summoning bell. How dare you? Qin Yu, do you want to die?" The little girl said in a domineering and spoiled manner. Black lines covered Qin Yu's face. After a moment of silence, he said in a low voice, "Stop bluffing. I can sense that the soul-summoning bell has already completed its master recognition. In other words, no matter what you are, I am your master." The little girl's face paled. You can try. I'm not afraid of you." Although her words were like this, she had an expression that said, "If you were any fiercer, I would immediately cry in front of you." Qin Yu rubbed his temples. "First of all, I saved you, right?" As he spoke, his eyes locked onto the little girl. She revealed a surprised expression that said, "How did you know?" And he immediately came to a conclusion. This little girl was indeed the golden soul of nothingness. The little girl bit her lips, not saying a word. Qin Yu's complexion relaxed. "You see, I don't have any ill intentions. But you need to tell me just what is going on right now so that there won't be any misunderstandings." To show his sincerity, he took several steps back. The little girl hesitated. This person wasn't easy to deceive, and his divine sense was within her body. If she angered him, she feared she would suffer a loss. If the first path didn't work, then she would switch to the second. She blinked her eyes, instantly becoming pitiful. Her long eyelashes trembled as she displayed her cute and silly nature to the extreme. I didn't do it on purpose. I'm afraid you really won't hurt me." Qin Yu's smile was incomparably bright. "You have no idea how much effort I spent for today. Not only will I not hurt you, but I will do everything in my power to protect you." The little girl sniffled. "But I'm so tired right now. I need to sleep right now, otherwise my head will hurt a lot. If you have anything to say, can you ask me later?" She looked pitiful, although Qin Yu knew that it was more likely she was faking it. As he looked at the little girl's expression, he couldn't help but nod. "Thank you." The little girl's eyes shined, a happy expression on her face. Her body turned into a beam of golden light that drilled into Qin Yu's body. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly probed his soul space and discovered the existence of the soul-summoning bell. With a trembling sound, he could faintly hear the little girl's surprised cry. He saw the purple moonlight rapidly gather towards the soul-summoning bell. The purple moonlight fused into the soul-summoning bell. The golden light that shimmered on its surface seemed to become even brighter. Qin Yu's soul opened its eyes and carefully gazed at the soul-summoning bell. According to the records of the monster-raising mystic art, after completing the master recognition process, he should be able to completely control this supreme soul treasure and obtain many benefits. But now there was indeed a faint connection between him and the soul-summoning bell, although it wasn't strong. Luckily, this connection told Qin Yu that he was still the master of the soul-summoning bell. It was just that he had no way of obtaining the right to control the soul-summoning bell. His eyes flashed. All of this was clearly related to the golden soul of nothingness. It seemed that the extraordinary soul of nothingness that he had accidentally obtained wasn't necessarily a good thing. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. A thoughtful look appeared in his eyes. He had to figure out the current state of the soul summoning bell as soon as possible. A treasure that belonged to him but couldn't be controlled was, strictly speaking, a hidden danger. Humph humph. Whether it's a hidden danger or not, you can think about it later. Since you're so easy to talk to, I'll remind you of something. There's an aura that is entangled with the soul summoning bell. When I fall into a deep slumber, it will automatically cut off this aura. You had best be careful not to be killed by others. Humph humph. Once I'm free, I'll draw a clear line between us. I don't care how you die. Qin Yu was startled. He wanted to continue asking, but the golden light on the surface of the soul-summoning bell rapidly dimmed until it vanished from sight. He should be the only one who knew of the existence of the soul-summoning bell. But the immortal sect's interference in the pre-celestial wood had already caused Qin Yu to develop suspicions. In addition to the words of the little girl, Qin Yu's worries deepened. At this time his heart skipped a beat. An extremely horrifying feeling came crashing down like Mount Tai, blotting out the heavens and covering the earth. Qin Yu stiffened. His heart seemed to be grasped by an invisible hand, nearly unable to beat. Endless fear rose up from the depths of his heart. A bone-chilling chill spread through his entire body as if his blood would freeze. An angry roar echoed out from the horizon. Even though he was in the Tao Arena's training room, he still couldn't isolate it. Outside Four Seasons City, in a twisted and folded space, the Buddhist nation's sovereign sat cross-legged, his expression indifferent. Above his head, a picture scroll unfurled. What appeared within was the scene of the immortal sect cultivators being killed. A hand stretched out from the shadows, seeming to represent endless darkness. But now, this darkness was being peeled away bit by bit. You cannot escape. I will find you. As the Buddhist nation's sovereign muttered to himself, his lips curled up in a smile, because at this moment his heart, that was as calm as still water, was suddenly filled with a trace of excitement. Although he didn't know who the owner of this hand was, his intuition told him that after he caught this hand, there would be an unexpected harvest. But at this time, the picture scroll that floated above the Buddhist nation sovereign's head suddenly trembled. Then it burst apart like a bubble. The Buddhist nation sovereign looked up. His pure and tranquil eyes that were as indifferent as a god's began to fill with blood and turn crimson. An endless and cruel aura broke out from his body. The entire twisted space violently trembled. Then it was shattered into countless fragments by a terrifying strength. The mountain below instantly vanished from sight. What was destroyed along with it was the surrounding 10 miles of space. Everything was crushed into nothingness by the destructive strength of a volcano. The Nether Domain Master's complexion changed. Impossible for the Buddhist nation's sovereign to lose his composure and erupt with such a terrifying killing intent. There was only one possibility. Something had happened to the soul summoning bell. But the 2 pre-celestial woods were in the hands of the immortal sect. Qin Yu couldn't find the materials to construct the soul-leading altar, so how could he complete the process of recognizing a master? The Buddhist nation sovereign laughed. Impossible? What is impossible? The soul-summoning bell has already completed its master recognition. The connection between me and it has been completely severed. Soul-summoning bell. I have already lost it. It is impossible for me to obtain it again. It is impossible. His smile became even more brilliant. But as this smile fell into the eyes of others, it caused them to feel a chill run down their spine, as if evil spirits were howling within them. Qin Yu, I believe that the 2nd pre-celestial wood was deliberately sold by you. The death of my immortal sect cultivators should be related to you. What a clever young man. You actually played us around in circles. I like you very much. I even wanted to receive you into the Buddhist nation and make you my servant so that I could bestow upon you unsurpassed good fortune. But Why did you ruin the most important good fortune of my life? Why? Chinyu, tell me why. Puff! Chinyu spat out a mouthful of blood. His complexion was deathly pale. His ears still seemed to echo with the sound of his name. Just a single voice had caused him to suffer heavy losses. This sort of method far surpassed his imagination. Humph! A cold snort resounded through the world. All of the oppression that Chinyu had to withstand instantly vanished. He looked up and saw a figure appear in the skies. Although this figure wasn't too tall, it seemed as if it could support the world. The Tao Arena Master, Solitary Westgate. For some unknown reason, Chinyu relaxed. When he looked again, Solitary Westgate had already vanished from sight. Outside Four Seasons City, the Buddhist nation sovereign's eyes were blood red. His boundless aura supported the heavens and earth, suppressing the world around him. Fellow Taoist Westgate, you want to stop me? Across from him, Solitary Westgate frowned. I promise you that I will ensure Qin Yu's safety in Four Seasons City. Of course, the Buddhist nation sovereign smiled. Then allow me to experience just what boundary fellow Taoist Westgate's cultivation has reached after all these years. With a step forwards, trillions of Buddha phantoms appeared, each one loudly chanting, their voices echoing through the world. Solitary Westgate's complexion was solemn. He lifted a hand and grasped forwards. A resonant sword cry rang out, and a sword condensed in the void, grasped in his palm. Monstrous sword intent. It was like 1,000,000 immortals and Buddhas could be cut down with a single sword strike. The Nether Domain Master's figure appeared. He looked at the Tao Arena Master with a dignified expression. There was a flash of hesitation in his eyes, but it soon vanished from sight. Today's situation could no longer be reversed. It was impossible to persuade the crazy Buddhist nation sovereign. He had no other choice. Since fellow Taoist Westgate isn't willing to step aside, then together with the Buddhist nation sovereign, I will ask for guidance. Bang! The aura of a third supreme powerhouse shot into the heavens. Winds and clouds rolled up in the highest heavens, all of the clouds torn apart. Perhaps ever since Four Seasons City was established, the sunlight had never been as brilliant as it was today. But at this time, all living beings beneath this sunlight felt as if they had fallen into hell. Their minds were covered with fear and despair. When the strongest powerhouses of the world fought, the heavens would collapse and the earth would sink in. The sun and moon would lose all light, and trillions of lives would be exterminated as sacrifices, and today they were the sacrifices. A shabby hatchet stretched out from space, quietly cutting open a door. Woodchopper Fu, who looked even older and was filled with the aura of decay, stepped out. Layers of wrinkles covered his face like shackles of a curse. With every movement he made, one could hear the creaking of his bones. Unable to bear the burden, his mortal body had already reached its limit. If he wanted to continue living, he would have to change to a new, young mortal body filled with vitality, and he had already waited a long time for this mortal body. Looking outside the city, he could see that the entire space was twisted and it was impossible to clearly see anything. But the auras inside were clear, like 3 blazing suns in the skies. He was only a step away from this level. But even if millions of years passed, he still wouldn't be able to cross it. Woodchopper Fu's eyes revealed anger and unwillingness, but in the end they turned into sighs. He straightened his back and slowly bent down. Then he turned and walked into the city. His road had already been cut off. Now the only thing he could do was continue living and live longer. Like a blazing sun, he would sprinkle down endless light and heat, obtaining awe and fear from all. This sort of thing should be left to the strongest powerhouses. Wasn't it fine as long as he lived on? With a deep chuckle, Woodchopper Fu's feet fell and his figure vanished. When he reappeared, he was standing outside the Tao Arena. He gently sniffed the air. The ugly wrinkles on his face wriggled like a withered chrysanthemum. What a fragrant and rich scent of life. It is truly intoxicating. The shadow beneath Qin Yu's feet wriggled, and Undying walked out. He bowed and said, "Little master, the aura you wanted me to pay attention to has appeared once more." His attitude became even more respectful. Of course, he would never admit that this was because he had personally witnessed Qin Yu complete the process of the soul summoning bell, recognizing him as master. "Was it you who discovered the person who tried to harm me?" Qin Yu's eyes flashed. Undying nodded. "Yes." Qin Yu thought for several breaths of time. "Do you have confidence that you can help me escape from his hands?" Undying smiled. "Of course." This little master was truly intelligent, and smart people didn't die so easily. This was especially crucial. It left one feeling happy. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. He looked up at the terrifying aura billowing in the skies. Although he was grateful to the Tao Arena Master for his protection, placing his life and death in the hands of others wasn't Qin Yu's style. Moreover, this was his best chance to escape. If he could let his identity as Qin Yu die, then he would no longer have to face the pursuit of the immortal sect. Woodchopper Fu looked up at the tightly shut doors. As the Tao Arena's top training room, the defensive abilities of the array formations here were quite good. Although breaking through wouldn't be difficult, doing so would inevitably cause a great commotion. For a powerhouse, they would only need a single breath of time to arrive here. As he was thinking about what to do, the doors in front of him quietly opened. A black-robed Qin Yu walked out from the training room. As his eyes fell on Woodchopper Fu, he revealed a bit of surprise before immediately composing himself. He cupped his hands together and said, "Qin Yu greets Senior. Thank you for helping me several months ago, helping me expel the immortal sect's Purple Moon and allowing me to make a breakthrough in my cultivation." Woodchopper Fu chuckled. "It seems that there is something on your body that we don't know about. You were actually able to discover my arrival. You are truly extraordinary." As he praised Qin Yu, his eyes gradually turned icy cold. "Although I am curious as to why you dared to come out on your own initiative, my many years of experience have taught me that too much curiosity often leads to nothing good. So, since you want to thank me, how about using your body as a token of thanks?" As he spoke, he lifted a hand and grasped forwards. All fluctuations in space were locked in. An invisible strength rushed in from all directions. It was like a silent mountain that wanted to suppress Qin Yu. Qin Yu's eyes were filled with panic. "Ah, Senior, what are you doing?" He flicked his sleeves, and there was the sound of breaking air. Countless beams of light cut through the skies like stars, howling towards him. Everything had been perfect, even smoother than he had expected. But if he wanted to escape, then his death had to be real. Thus, no matter who it was that came, Qin Yu had to force them to deal a heavy blow. Just imprisoning them was far from enough. With his cultivation, it was impossible to accomplish this. Thus, he could only rely on external objects. And Qin Yu just happened to have a hidden card in his hands that could achieve this goal. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. He couldn't help but sigh at the impermanence of the world. In the past, when he had spent so much effort to refine this superstorm flow, how could he have imagined that he would use it to commit suicide? Woodchopper Fu's lips curled up. "Brat Qin Yu, is this your hidden card? Although it is powerful, it is still far too weak for me." He lifted his hand, his movements not changing. He said in a soft voice, "Give me your mortal body." Before his voice fell, Woodchopper Fu revealed a look of anger. "What are you doing?" Bang, 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 the entire superstorm flow began to wildly explode. The resulting destructive strength submerged Qin Yu's body. Before he was swallowed up by the distorted space, Qin Yu's lips curled up in a smile. "Thank you very much. You are the third good person I have encountered recently." Rumble, rumble. A terrifying strength tumbled about. A ripple appeared in Woodchopper Fu's imprisonment of space. Outside Four Seasons City, Solitary Westgate instantly sensed something. His eyes turned icy cold, and he shouted out, "Woodchopper Fu, you are courting death!" Schwa, his figure vanished, and he reappeared in the skies above the Dao Arena. A terrifying aura descended, like a starry sky, capable of submerging all. The Buddhist nation sovereign and nether domain master followed close behind. The two of them frowned and looked towards another corner. Black-robed stepped forwards. After a moment of silence, he said, "Although I am a bit puzzled, it was indeed Woodchopper Fu who attacked. He forced Qin Yu into a desperate situation and finally caused him to explode his magic tool." "He really died?" The Buddhist nation sovereign lifted a hand and grasped forwards. Faint traces of gray appeared. This was the aura of death. The nether domain master relaxed a little. Since Qin Yu had died, perhaps today's collision could be avoided. If so, then he would have to thank Woodchopper Fu. He looked over, and his lips curled up in a smile. Fellow Taoist Westgate listened to this old man's explanation. Things are not like this. As Woodchopper Fu spoke, he slashed backwards with a hatchet in his hand. Space instantly tore apart, and he dodged in. Solitary Westgate was expressionless. He threw the sword in his hand forwards, and the healing space collapsed once more. In the distance, there was a pitiful scream. Whoosh! The sword entered his hand. Beads of blood tumbled down the blade. The nether domain master cupped his hands across his chest. Fellow Taoist Westgate, we bid our farewells. The Buddhist nation sovereign turned and left, vanishing from sight with a single step. Black-robed, cupped his hands together and turned into a phantom that fused into the world. In the blink of an eye, the world-destroying aura scattered away. The brilliant sunlight above his head was replaced by a trace of warmth. Solitary Westgate let go of the sword, and it scattered. His eyebrows furrowed together, pain in his eyes. Qin Yu had died. Did this mean that his original calculations were wrong? That Yun-Yang and Tranquil would never return? No, it couldn't be like this. There had to be something wrong. Solitary Westgate slowly swept his eyes around. His gaze finally fell on the training room's door. His eyes sharpened. With this brat Qin Yu's intelligence and cautiousness, why would he open the door on his own initiative before determining if he was a friend or foe? He lifted a hand and grasped forwards. Faint traces of gray appeared. This was indeed the aura of fresh death. No, this aura was wrong. Although it was similar, it wasn't Qin Yu's. Solitary Westgate's eyes brightened, and he smiled. Good brat, you actually thought of using this chance to escape. Afterwards, you will be like a dragon diving into the abyss. I knew you wouldn't die so easily. He hesitated for a moment, and then pointed a finger at the heavens. A terrifying aura shot into the skies like a pillar, completely shattering the world's aura. Billowing waves of sound swept out in all directions, like endless thunder roaring. Brat, today I will help you erase all of your aura. Don't disappoint my expectations. I hope that the next time I see you, you will have the strength to impress me. 10,000 miles away from Four Seasons City, in the shadows of a mountain, a black lotus suddenly appeared. It quietly bloomed in the shadows, revealing Qin Yu's figure. Little master, I need to rest for some time. You must be careful from now on. Undying's voice sounded out in Qin Yu's mind before returning to silence. To conceal himself from the strongest powerhouses of the world was clearly an extremely difficult matter. In order for Undying to accomplish this, he must have paid a tremendous price. At the very least, the weakness in his voice was unprecedented. Qin Yu earnestly said, Undying, thank you. There was no response because he had fallen into a deep sleep. Chapter 471. Su Sheng's fear became a reality. For some unknown reason, the sex investigation into Grandmaster Yao's whereabouts suddenly became more intense, and the number of interrogations in the dungeon rapidly increased. As one of the stewards, although he was the youngest, Su Sheng still had considerable authority. After being allowed to participate in the interrogations, Su Sheng's heart became increasingly heavy. He was well aware that secretly obstructing the progress of the interrogations and deliberately distorting the information was an extremely dangerous matter that could be exposed at any moment. But Su Sheng had no other choice. Although he didn't know the specific reason, the sect seemed to value Grandmaster Yao greatly. Once they discovered that he had disappeared, there was no way he could escape their wrath. If one often walked by the river, there would be a day when their shoes would be wet. No matter how careful Su Sheng was and how clean his hands and feet were, half a month later, his resting room in the dungeon was still brutally kicked open. The one who led in was the chief steward of the dungeon. His old face was taut, and he waved his hand. "Take him!" Su Sheng's heart sank to the bottom of the valley, but on the surface he was incomparably angry. "Old man, what is the meaning of this? I, Su Sheng, have always been respectful and filial to you. If I have done anything wrong, please point it out and I will definitely change." The chief steward grinned, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth. "You brat, you have always been smart. I originally thought that I wouldn't be able to suppress you in 100 years, but I never thought you would be so stupid." He paused for a moment, a mocking light in his dim yellow eyes. "We are all in this business. Others might not be able to see what you did during the interrogations, but you can't hide it from our eyes. Don't struggle and don't try to resist. Otherwise, you should know that I would be happy to see you killed on the spot." Su Sheng clenched his teeth. "Good. I admit defeat today, but I am loyal and devoted to the sect. I am not someone that can be casually slandered." No matter how afraid he was, without irrefutable evidence, he wouldn't relent. After staying in the dungeon for so many years, he had seen many things that he shouldn't have seen. He certainly understood what was the best choice to make. Leniency for those who confessed. Haha. Anyone who believed these words was an idiot. Su Sheng's robes were stripped off and thrown deep into the dungeon. His interrogations soon began. There was no lack of people hitting someone while they were down, much less the Black Demon Sect's dungeon, a place filled with filth and evil. The chief steward was a cautious person with extremely sharp eyesight. If he wasn't absolutely sure that Su Sheng wouldn't have a chance to make a comeback this time, he wouldn't be so ruthless. Since that was the case, there was nothing to worry about. Where there were people, there would be Jianghu. This was a very useless saying. Su Sheng was able to climb to the position of manager at such a young age. He had offended many people over the years, and most of the time he had taken advantage of them. Now, retribution had come. He had tasted all the interrogation methods in the dungeon over the past few days. Other than his face being exceptionally pale, his entire body was still in shape. At least on the surface, he did not seem to have suffered any serious injuries. But anyone who knew how to interrogate someone would know that this kind of method, where no punishment could be seen, was the most terrifying. Su Sheng was not someone who could endure hardship, but he was even more afraid of death. He knew that once he spat, he might not live to see the sun the next day. Therefore, no matter how terrifying the torture methods were, he gritted his teeth and endured it. But he was also well aware that even if he could last for 3 to 5 days, there would come a time when his will would collapse. As an expert in this field, he didn't doubt this at all. There were people being tortured in the dungeon. Although they hadn't obtained a precise confession, the chief elder's patience had already been exhausted. The sect master had clearly warned him not to allow anything to happen to Yao Bin. If he delayed the sect master from eliminating this hidden danger, then, as the chief elder, he might not be able to bear the responsibility. Outside Grandmaster Yao's palace, a group of cold-faced cultivators arrived. They wore black robes embroidered with skulls, indicating that they came from the sect's punishment division. The dungeon was a place where people were imprisoned and interrogated. The punishment division was responsible for hunting down any group of evil dogs that violated the sect's rules. No one that was locked onto by them could escape. By the orders of the chief elder, We are here to investigate Grandmaster Yao Bin's residence. If anyone dares to stop us, kill them on the spot." With a cold shout, the Punishment Division cultivator waved his hand. Black robes flooded into the hall like a tide. Tuba and Tutu tried to stop them, but their strategy of playing the fool didn't work. Tutu's eyes turned red. Just as he was about to go all out, he was held down by Tuba, who slowly shook his head at him. The two barbarians allowed themselves to be captured. The search soon came to a conclusion. Yao Bin wasn't in the sect. A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Although he had a bad premonition, when he finally saw the results, the chief elder's complexion paled. Tuba and Tutu were thrown into the dungeon and tortured together with Su Sheng. There were also those that were taken in by Qin Yu, and they were also the ones that suffered the same fate. Unlike Su Sheng, who refused to speak no matter what, after Tuba entered the dungeon, he didn't need to be interrogated before he confessed on his own. He helplessly said, "My family's grandmaster, Yao, has some private matters that he doesn't want others to know about. So he secretly left the sect. But Grandmaster Yao said that he would pay a visit to the Demon Ascension Gate, so he will return soon." The results were soon delivered to the chief elder. He didn't dare to make a judgment on his own, so he brought the news into the Forbidden Land. The Black Demon Sect sovereign was a dignified, middle-aged man. He had a dignified appearance. "That is possible." The chief elder nodded. "I also think so. There is no reason for Yao Bin to flee the sect." He paused for a moment and then said, "Then how should we deal with those people in the dungeon?" Tai Qianqiu smiled. Whether or not Yao Bin betrayed the sect, he left the sect without permission. "First, lock those two barbarians in the dungeon. If he returns on time, then let them go." He didn't say anything else. It was clear that if Qin Yu didn't return, then there was no need for them to live. The chief elder hesitated for a moment. "Sovereign, there are already people that have taken a fancy to Yao Bin's wealth. Since he might return, should we stop them?" "No need. Since he made a mistake, he should be prepared to accept punishment." The chief elder bowed and excused himself. Tai Qianqiu coughed. Blood tumbled in his chest, and his face flushed red. He took out a white handkerchief and wiped the blood from the corners of his lips. With a bit of strength, the handkerchief was crushed to powder that fell to the ground. "Demon Ascension Gate," he whispered, a cold intent in his eyes. When Su Sheng was released from the torture rack, his complexion was extremely ugly. This was because he had already thought of the methods that Tuba could think of countless times. That's right, this excuse could ensure temporary safety. But the Demon Ascension Gate was about to open. If Grandmaster Yao didn't return in time, then everything would be over. "Are you crazy?" After being tossed onto the smelly, withered grass, Su Sheng struggled to look up, his face full of anger. Tuba lightly said, "You should know that if you continue to be tortured, even if you don't die, you will still be completely crippled." Su Sheng clenched his teeth. "Being crippled is better than dying." "We won't die." Tuba looked up, his expression incomparably calm. "The Grandmaster will definitely return before the Demon Ascension Gate opens." Su Sheng didn't know where Tuba's confidence came from. It had to be known that it was already over 2 months late from the agreed date of return. Perhaps the Grandmaster Yao they were all waiting for had already suffered an accident in the land of divinity and demons. Anything could happen. Tuba's lips curved up. When this callous big fellow suddenly smiled, he gave off a particularly gentle feeling. "Don't worry. Your performance this time was very good. Once the Grandmaster returns, he will definitely reward you." For some unknown reason, Su Sheng suddenly calmed down a bit. He let out a deep breath and cursed several times. The moment his head touched the ground, he fell unconscious. Tuba took out a pill, opened Su Sheng's mouth, and stuffed it in. Tuba felt a bit of heartache. "This is something that the Grandmaster gave us. Are we going to let him eat it like this?" Tuba lightly said, whether Su Sheng did it to protect himself or for some other reason. His performance this time is enough to obtain the Grandmaster's approval. Thus, I must save him. Tuda didn't think much of this, but he knew that his brain wasn't as good as Tuba's. He shook his head, no longer speaking, but there was a bit of worry in his eyes. Tuba, do you think the Grandmaster will return in time? Tuba's eyes brightened. Believe me, the Grandmaster will definitely return. In fact, when Qinyu returned to the Black Demon sect, 9 months had already passed since he left. From afar, he could see the entrance to the Black Demon sect appear in front of him. He let out a long breath and smiled, although he didn't have much of a favorable impression towards this place. For a long time to come, he could only use Yao Bin's identity to travel the world. He lifted a hand and took out a set of black robes. Then his figure flickered, and he soon flew to the entrance. As he verified his identity token, several Black Demon sect cultivators had strange expressions. Seize him! With a loud shout, 2 Black Demon sect cultivators attacked. Unfortunately, before they could touch Qinyu, they were sent flying backwards. Blood sprang out from their mouths and noses. A guard roared out in anger. Yao Bin betrayed the sect and violated the rules of the sect. All disciples will be imprisoned. Do you dare to resist? Qin Yu was silent for a moment. He lifted a hand and pulled down his black robes, revealing a young and inexperienced face. If someone who knew Qinyu were here, they would discover that this was the appearance he had before he obtained the little blue lamp. As his cultivation rose and his demon body became more successful, his appearance had undergone countless minor adjustments. He had become firm and handsome, completely different from his initial appearance. Even if someone who had seen Qinyu stood in front of them, they wouldn't be able to tell that they were the same person. His expression was light. His icy cold eyes covered the several Black Demon sect cultivators, who said, "I betrayed the sect." Without bothering with the stunned guards, Qinyu entered the entrance to the Black Demon sect. His footsteps didn't seem fast, but in just a flash his figure had vanished from sight. As he passed by a breeding garden, Qinyu stopped. He looked up at the figure that was being stepped on the ground. Su Sheng, Chief Steward Su, when I was in the dungeon, you took good care of me. I fear you never imagined that you would fall into my hands one day. The owner of the large feet that were stepping on Qinyu's face was a thin and swarthy cultivator. He lifted up a nearby bucket of water and said, "Are you hungry? I think I saw you just now, secretly eating something. If you were hungry, why didn't you tell me? Now that I'm letting you eat your fill, you don't need to thank me." The bucket of water was tipped over. The pungent smell of dirty water flowed down the boots and soaked Su Sheng's face. The swarthy cultivator and the several people around him laughed out loud. Bang! The bucket of water was tossed to the side. The swarthy cultivator rubbed Su Sheng's face several times and bent down. "Hee, Steward Su, how can you be so wasteful when eating? You should know that our breeding garden provides meat for the entire sect, and we hate this sort of wasteful behavior the most. Someone, bring a spoon and scoop it up from the ground. Feed it to our Steward Su." Su Sheng looked up from the dirty water and mud. He wiped his face with a hand and said, "Brother, I was only acting on orders to follow the rules of the sect. Can't you be merciful and let me off this time?" The swarthy cultivator laughed. "Steward Su doesn't have much time left. If you don't have some fun, you won't be able to any more. So, please forgive me. What are you standing around for? Hurry up and help. Steward Su is hungry." "Hold on." Su Sheng shook his head. "I've been in the dungeon for all these years, and for better or worse, I've accumulated some wealth. Besides the parts that have been divided up, there's also a portion that I've hidden away. I'll tell you where my wealth is, and you can spare me today. How about it?" The swarthy cultivator's eyes brightened. "Good. I'm warning you. You had best not play with me." As he spoke, he resisted the stench and leaned over. Ah! With a pitiful cry, Su Sheng was kicked away and knocked over a wooden fence. He violently coughed and spat out an ear onto the ground. He laughed, and his eyes were like those of a wolf. "Your grandfather is here. If you have the guts, then kill me." The swarthy cultivator gripped his wound, blood dripping down his fingers. His body trembled with anger. "Beat him. Beat him to death for me." Su Sheng coughed and spat out a large amount of blood, but there was a look of relief in his eyes. Dying here today was better than returning to the dungeon. The demon ascension gate was about to open, and there was no news of Grandmaster Yao. The faith that Su Sheng had held onto for the last several months suddenly collapsed. "That damned tuba! I must have been blind to believe your nonsense." Su Sheng looked at the several people rushing at him and cursed out loud. He closed his eyes, but the expected storm of beatings didn't arrive. With the sound of several heavy objects falling to the ground, Su Sheng struggled to open his swollen eyes. When he saw the figure in front of him, he froze where he was. Qin Yu looked at the extremely miserable Su Sheng and could feel his surging emotions. After a moment of silence, he smiled and said, "I'm sorry I came back late." Through the purple light in his soul, Su Sheng already knew who Qin Yu was. His lips trembled, and then he burst into tears. There was no longer any trace of his previous ruthlessness and callousness. The swarthy cultivator saw that the situation was far from good. He turned and ran away, but before he could run far, a bucket of dirty water came howling over and smashed into his head. Qin Yu turned around. "How do you want to deal with this person?" Su Sheng's laughter was uglier than crying. "There is no need for Grandmaster Yao to worry. Just leave him to me." The twitching, dark-skinned cultivator trembled as he heard these words. Then he fainted. Qin Yu smiled. "If you want revenge, you must first live on." With a flick of his sleeves, countless streams of water gathered in the air. He threw Su Sheng in and washed him. Although he still looked miserable, at least the filth on his body was washed away. A palm struck his chest. Su Sheng stuffily coughed and turned his head to vomit. Black blood, mixed with blood clots, soon piled up. When he stopped vomiting, Su Sheng's breath was thin, but there was a bit more color to his face. Qin Yu fed him several pills and nodded. "He won't die. After resting for some time, he will be as lively as a tiger." Su Sheng struggled to bow. "Thank you, Grandmaster." "I can guess, even if you don't say it. I have implicated you this time. Once I finish handling the trivial matters, I will naturally compensate you." "All right, tell me roughly, what's the situation now?" Through Su Sheng, Qin Yu determined that Tuba and Tutu were locked up in the dungeon. Although they had suffered a bit, their lives weren't in danger for the time being. As for his residence, alchemy room, medicine garden divided by the sect, as well as the spirit plant materials he obtained from trading during this period of time, they had all been divided up by others. This was better than he expected. At the very least, no one had died. Moreover, in Qin Yu's opinion, this was a good opportunity. The demon ascension gate was about to open, and this was the perfect time to build up momentum for himself. He would use these people as stepping stones for his rise to fame. He was confident in this. There was naturally a reason why he had been delayed for so long. On the way back, his path of metal had reached perfection, and he had already experienced the backlash of the demon body once. He wouldn't allow himself to make the same mistake again. He had suppressed his cultivation and obtained enough demon blood to upgrade his demon body. In addition, he had also stabilized his Blue Sea realm. This was the reason why he had been delayed until now. When he was at the Divine Soul realm, he had been able to contend with a Blue Sea. Now that he was at the Blue Sea realm, did his strength still need to be mentioned? He lightly said, "You rest here. I will go take a look first and see just who it is that doesn't even give me a place to stay." Whoosh. Chapter 472. Yao Bin had returned. The chief elder smiled, his tense heart relaxing. Although the sect master hadn't made a big fuss about this matter, he was well aware of how highly the sect master regarded Yao Bin. If Yao Bin didn't return, the sect master would be enraged and countless people would die. Even he wouldn't be able to escape the blame. Luckily, this wouldn't happen again. Su Song hesitated for a moment. Chief, Yao Bin's residence in the sect has been occupied by a disciple selected from the lower sect, Feng Changjing. Should we inform him to avoid any conflict? The chief elder shook his head. There is no need. Don't interfere in this matter. Just pretend you don't know that Yao Bin has returned. The sect master had detained 2 barbarians and punished Su Sheng, who was close to Yao Bin. Wasn't this all in order to solidify the fact that Yao Bin had violated sect rules? This was a rare opportunity. As long as Yao Bin came into conflict with others, there would naturally be a reason to pinch him. The sect master would be happy to see this happen. Su Song, has Feng Changjing's list of participants in the Demon Ascension Gate been reported? Su Song's heart skipped a beat. Because there are still 10 days until the deadline, it hasn't been reported yet. The chief elder lightly said, then report it. Grandmaster Yao's residence could be considered high quality even in the Black Demon sect. The main hall was built on a mountain, and there was a mountain spring that flowed down. It was led to the front of the hall by a waterway constructed from white jade, irrigating a verdant grassland. After careful repair and care, the grassland and several giant mulberry trees were particularly exquisite. Now, on this grassland, beneath the shade of the mulberry trees, there were over a dozen long tables scattered about. All sorts of exquisite delicacies, pastries, and fruits were placed on the pure white tables. At a glance, one could see that the materials used were extremely exquisite. Crystal cups were arranged in a wine tower, filled with deep red wine. Just a single sniff of the sweet fragrance was enough to make one feel carefree and happy. Of the 30-some young cultivators that had been invited to attend the banquet, besides a few that had reserved expressions, all of them had looks of praise and envy in their eyes. I heard that this was originally the residence of an alchemy grandmaster of the Black Demon sect. The standard of the palace was much higher than that of an ordinary elder. For fellow Taoist Feng to be able to live here, his methods are truly transcendent. A purple-haired cultivator lowered his voice, his words filled with envy. Another female cultivator covered her mouth and giggled. Who doesn't know that Feng Changjing has a big brother? In the last Demon Ascension Gate, he smoothly entered the demonic path. I heard that his talent is extremely fierce, and he was accepted as a disciple by one of the demonic path's elders. Now he has already reached the revered Blue Sea realm, and his future is limitless. With such a big brother, he will naturally be looked at in a new light. The scholarly white-clothed youth said, I heard that the Black Demon sect's alchemy grandmaster who originally lived here was an extremely fierce character. Because he left the sect without permission, he was punished. That is why this place became fellow Taoist Feng's residence. Some people say that this alchemy grandmaster originally intended to join the Demon Ascension Gate. If he were to come back and discover this, I fear there would be some trouble. Humph! What the Demon Ascension Gate tested was true strength. So what if one was an alchemy grandmaster? It had to be known that those that surpassed 100 years of age would have to face the demonic path's recruitment standards several times harsher. Even if this person came back with the current situation, I fear he would be like a clay bodhisattva crossing a river. Would he still dare to make things difficult for fellow Taoist Feng? Fellow Taoist Feng is someone who has awakened his demonic bloodline. Not only is he tyrannical in strength, but his future achievements will likely be no worse than his big brother's. If this grandmaster really does come back, then turning a blind eye to him is his best choice. Otherwise, he will only be looking for trouble and making himself unhappy. The group of people nodded in agreement. They looked at the smiling, handsome man under the mulberry tree. He wore a green robe that was tailored to his body, making him look even more otherworldly. His long black hair was casually draped over his shoulder, swaying gently in the wind. Confidence and calmness flowed from his body like water. What an extraordinary character! Qin Yu praised inwardly. He walked in front of the exquisite white tablecloth and picked up a crystal cup from the wine tower. He took a sip and nodded in satisfaction. Several maids and servants that served as temporary attendants revealed hesitation in their eyes. This person didn't seem to be a guest invited by their young master, but Qin Yu's calm demeanor made it so that they didn't dare to offend him. Perhaps this person was their young master's friend. They believed their eyesight wasn't bad. Someone with such a temperament absolutely wouldn't be someone that came to eat and drink. Moreover, who would dare to cause trouble at their young master's banquet? As the several temporary attendants were thinking this, they saw Qin Yu turn around and walk towards several guests that were gathered together. This caused them to calm down, as they thought this person wasn't an ordinary person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken the initiative to speak to them. Luckily, they hadn't been impulsive just now. Otherwise, if they had embarrassed their young master at the banquet, their fates wouldn't have been too good. This black-robed young man's appearance could not be considered handsome. In fact, he even seemed somewhat inexperienced. However, his eyes were deep and bright, and his body gave off an indescribable aura. Several maids couldn't help but look at him. They blinked, wondering if they would have a chance to serve this guest today. A faint blush immediately appeared on their faces. They watched as Qin Yu walked in front of a group of guests. He smiled and said something. After receiving a response, he nodded and glanced at their young master sitting under the mulberry tree. Then he drank a cup of wine, smiling and thanking them. Then he walked towards the mulberry tree. When Feng Changjing was very young, he had awakened his demonic bloodline. After some tests, his bloodline strength was Shadow, an ability that a peak assassin must have. A strength that walked in the darkness often had extremely sharp senses. As Qin Yu walked towards him, Feng Changjing subconsciously frowned. He apologized and turned around. Then he saw Qin Yu calmly walking towards him with a cup of wine in hand. His eyebrows furrowed even tighter. Today's banquet had invited the geniuses selected by the lower sex that had the qualifications to compete for the Demon Ascension Gate. In order to avoid being disrespectful at the banquet, he was well aware of everyone's information, so he was certain that this person wasn't his guest. It was just that Qin Yu's current actions left him hesitant to make a judgment. He decided to take a look first. With this thought in mind, Feng Changjing smiled. "Fellow Taoist, you look unfamiliar. Are you a senior apprentice brother from the Black Demon sect? I am honored that you can attend my banquet today." His words immediately attracted attention. 2 men and 2 women beside him turned to look at him. These people had 2 common characteristics. The first was their youth, and the second was their arrogance, both of which were naturally revealed. Their eyes fell on Qin Yu, lingering for a moment before looking away. They were a bit curious as to why Feng Changjing would be so polite to such an ordinary boy. So what if he was a Black Demon sect cultivator? They had obtained the chance to participate in the Demon Ascension Gate. If they were chosen, they could enter the demonic path. Even if they were unlucky and failed, any of the 12 branches would be more than willing to accept them. Qin Yu smiled and raised his cup. His eyes swept around. The scenery here isn't bad. Unfortunately, I didn't know how to use it before, but now it seems that it's quite suitable for holding banquets. Feng Changjing's smile faded a bit. "Fellow Taoist, are you familiar with this place?" Qin Yu nodded. "I've lived here for some time. Unfortunately, I was busy cultivating all day and neglected this beautiful scenery. I must thank fellow Taoist Feng for giving me some reminders." Feng Changjing lightly said, "Fellow Taoist, why are you thanking me?" A cold intent circulated around him. The eyes of the 2 young men and 2 young women flashed with surprise. They never thought that this cultivator would dare to be so disrespectful. If this were some other day, they wouldn't mind watching Feng Changjing make a fool of himself. But now they were at the Black Demon sect and they were outsiders. Moreover, As the main guests of the banquet, if they were disturbed by someone else, they would also lose face. The four people looked over, their cold and indifferent eyes filled with a faint chill. But unfortunately, these threatening gazes had no effect on Chinyu. He had seen the figure of a divine dragon soaring through the highest heavens, so he naturally wouldn't care about it. He was like a loach tossing about in a pool of black water. Chinyu smiled. Of course I have to thank you. After all, this is where I live. He paused for a moment and continued to say, Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I am Yao Bin, an alchemist of the Black Demon sect. On the grassland, there was silence in an instant. When Feng Changjing and the others revealed their ill intent, they had already attracted everyone's attention. Although Qin Yu's voice wasn't loud, everyone could still hear him clearly. Many people's eyes widened. This was the original master had returned. Those that knew the inside story were excited. It was clear that a good show was about to begin. The Demon Ascension Gate had a limited number of spots, and Feng Changjing was recognized as a popular candidate. If there was an accident that eliminated him ahead of time, that would be for the best. But it seemed that this was only a beautiful wish. The chances of it coming true were far too small. Feng Changjing frowned for a moment before composing himself. I'm sorry, but I don't know who you are, so please do not disturb my banquet. If there is nothing else, please leave immediately. A cultivator shouted out, Did you hear that? My cousin is telling you to leave. If you continue to pester me, don't blame me for being impolite. This person was tall and sturdy like an iron tower. His muscles bulged out, and his aura was truly astonishing. Wherever he landed, the grassland caved in, forming a deep pit. Countless blades of grass were twisted into powder by the surging energy. Qin, you didn't even glance at him. I truly don't know who fellow Taoist Feng is, so there is no need to give me any face. Then, please take your people and leave my residence. Moreover, before you leave, it would be best if you restore everything to its original state. I have experienced a great deal of trouble recently, so I don't want any more problems to crop up. Feng Changjing's eyes were ice cold, as if he were looking at a dead man. You are seeking death. With a loud shout, the tall and sturdy cultivator rushed forwards. He lifted a hand and thrust it forwards. The air emitted a shrill scream, and wherever his fingers passed, space would twist. Bang! There was a deep explosion, like a small mountain crashing into the ground. Then there really was a tall and sturdy figure that tumbled to the ground. The sound of bones breaking wasn't loud, but as it fell into the ears, it caused an instinctive chill to rise from the depths of one's heart. Qin, you still stood where he was, his aura the same as before. But at this moment, everyone's eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. He hadn't moved at all, but the tall and sturdy cultivator seemed to have crashed into a mountain and was sent flying away. Looking at his incomparably strong body that was still subconsciously twitching in his unconscious state, many people quivered and felt their hairs stand on end. I don't want to say the same words a second time. Fellow Taoist Feng, you can take your people and leave now. Qin Yu calmly said, I have other matters to deal with. Compared to the spirit plant materials he had accumulated and the medicine garden that the sect had allocated to him, this dwelling was indeed the lowest in value. Moreover, Tuba and Tutu were still being punished in the dungeon. Even if their lives weren't in danger, Qin Yu still wanted to rescue them as soon as possible. Feng Changjing's eyes suddenly turned pure darkness. His confident and carefree aura suddenly turned into a boundless chill. Yao Bin, congratulations. You have successfully angered me. Shua! He instantly vanished from where he stood. No one could clearly see his movements. In the next moment, he appeared behind Qin Yu and pointed a finger at the back of his head. His fingertip was the same as his eyes, pure darkness. Underneath this hue, his finger seemed like it was made of jade, emitting a faint halo of light. The demonic bloodline, Shadow. Not only did it have the ability to hide, but its killing power was even more terrifying. It was just that in these past years he had hidden it deeply and had never used it in front of others. It was just that Qin Yu's performance just now had left him feeling restless. So he didn't hesitate to use his strongest strength. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat, and a warm current surged through his body. On his back, a demon head appeared, and its eyes opened. Feng Changjing's cold and callous face suddenly revealed a look of panic. At this moment, he felt as if he had been locked onto by someone at the top of the food chain. Shadow's strength began to fluctuate. Even his movements became sluggish and his speed dropped. Qin Yu revealed a look of surprise. He never thought that such a situation would occur. The demonic bloodline in his body had actually awakened on its own and suppressed Feng Changjing's bloodline strength. Although he didn't fear Feng Changjing's demonic bloodline at all, in this state he could clearly win more easily. Without looking back, Qin Yu stepped forwards. The ground trembled, and a shockwave visible to the naked eye erupted in all directions. Feng Changjing bore the brunt of this attack. Before he could respond, he was sent flying away. Following that, the long tables on the field were smashed to pieces. Hurry and dodge! Don't touch him! In the chaos, the guests dodged in distress. In the blink of an eye, the entire banquet had been thoroughly destroyed. Puff! Feng Changjing spat out a mouthful of blood. His complexion was as white as paper, and his body wavered. He glared at Qin Yu, his eyes filled with hatred, but even more with fear. This was because from Qin Yu he could feel a demonic bloodline that absolutely crushed him. This other person was also a natural-born disciple of the demonic path. Qin Yu had no expression. Feng Changjing, I don't know, nor do I care whether you were plotted against or whether you took the initiative to occupy my residence. But this doesn't affect the result, so I'm still unhappy. Today was only a light punishment. If you are unwilling, I will accompany you at any time. But next time, you will not have such good luck. I will go and deal with other matters. Before I return, restore this place to its original state. Otherwise, believe me when I say that you will regret this. As the group of lower sects came up to participate in the Demon Ascension Gate, the geniuses all had complicated expressions on their faces. Then, Qin Yu turned and walked away, leaving behind an unreachable back. 2 men and 2 women, for seated contestants, all had pale faces. As they looked at Feng Changjing, they couldn't help but reveal resentment. If it weren't for him, how could they have provoked such a terrifying character? They heard that this person was also going to participate in the Demon Ascension Gate. If so, didn't that mean they might meet in the arena soon? Thinking of this possibility, the 4 people instinctively revealed fear in their eyes. They clenched their teeth and left. The banquet that had started perfectly ended in a sad manner. Feng Changjing clearly wasn't an idiot. On the contrary, he was someone who was able to let go of things easily. Before everyone had left, he had already ordered his servants to clean up the messy grassland. This was because he was well aware that he wasn't Qin Yu's match. In the short term, there was no way he could retaliate against Qin Yu. If so, then he would decisively admit defeat and not give Qin Yu a chance to continue making things difficult for him. As for everything that happened today, there would be countless possibilities in the future. Every alchemy grandmaster in the Black Demon sect had their own medicine garden divided by the sect. Of course, these so-called medicine gardens weren't spirit plants, but all sorts of monster beasts. Thus, in the demonic path, this sort of medicine garden was called a monster beast hunting ground. According to quality and size, there were 13 monster beast hunting grounds in the Black Demon sect. They were numbered according to their quality. Yao Bin's original monster beast hunting grounds were the 12th and 13th. It was just that he had substituted himself for Jiang Taisho in a competition of detoxification and became the number 1 alchemist in the Black Demon sect. He didn't need to appear at all, and the Black Demon sect automatically replaced him, giving him the 4th and 5th monster beast hunting grounds. As for the 1st and 2nd monster beast hunting grounds, they had always been the private property of the Lord Sect Master. As for the third monster beast hunting ground, it was owned by the chief elder. Thus, what Qin Yu obtained was the best monster beast hunting ground. When news of Yao Bin leaving the sect without permission was released, although some people were tempted, they didn't dare to recklessly do anything. But as time passed, there was no news from Yao Bin. As the Demon Ascension Gate approached, more and more covetous gazes came from all over the sect. An inner sect elder took the lead and joined forces with 2 alchemy grandmasters to take away the 4th monster beast hunting ground. As for the 5th monster beast hunting ground, it was occupied by 2 other alchemy grandmasters. But they never imagined that after paying a considerable price to quell the discontent of all sides, and after obtaining the rights to 2 monster beast hunting grounds, Yao Bin would actually return. Feng Changjing had been in the limelight recently. He possessed the demonic bloodline and was one of the hottest topics in the Demon Ascension Gate. His future was limitless. It was because of this that his every move was paid close attention to. The news that Yao Bin had appeared and swept through his banquet and easily defeated him spread through the entire Black Demon sect in a short period of time. Thus, when Qin Yu's figure appeared in the 4th monster beast hunting ground, there were already people waiting at the entrance. Interestingly enough, this was the first time that Qin Yu had come to his own monster beast hunting ground. The entrance was in the mountain wall, an ordinary crack. Deep within this crack was a small world. This was the true monster beast hunting ground, and there were many monster beast communities that lived and multiplied within. Grandmaster Yao Bin's smooth return is truly a cause for celebration. The one who spoke was a tall and thin old man standing at the front. He wore long robes, and the dark golden lines on his sleeves indicated that he was an elder of the sect. At this time he was all smiles, but there was a flash of surprise in his eyes. Yao Bin had always been mysterious in the Black Demon sect. He never imagined he would be so young. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. "Greetings, elder." He looked up and continued to say, "During this period of time, I've had to trouble Elder to help me take care of the monster beast hunting ground. Now that I've returned, I won't bother you any further." To put it bluntly, the main character had returned. So scram back to wherever you came from. The tall and thin old man's smile didn't change. "My name is Tianjun. I have been in seclusion for many years, so I don't think Grandmaster Yao recognizes me. But I have heard of Grandmaster Yao's name before. Now that I see you today, you truly live up to your reputation. I have already ordered people to prepare some meager wine. Grandmaster Yao, would you be willing to give me some face?" Qin Yu shook his head. "I apologize. I still have to visit many people, so I don't have the time." Behind him, several young cultivators had ill complexions. It was clear they were dissatisfied with Qin Yu's performance. Although Elder Tian's status in the sect wasn't high, his status was extremely honored. If the current sect master saw him, he would have to call him High Master. This surname, Yao actually dared to be so arrogant. Tianjin smiled. "Since Grandmaster Yao has matters to attend to, it won't be too late to postpone the banquet. But I just happen to need to refine a batch of pills, and I need to capture monster beasts from the hunting ground. I wonder if Grandmaster Yao can extend the time by several days. At most half a month. I will send someone to deliver the entrance key to Grandmaster Yao's residence." Qin Yu faintly smiled. "Does Elder Tian think I am stupid?" Tianjun's smile faded. "What does Grandmaster Yao mean by this?" Chapter 473. Yao Bin. Don't think you can disrespect Elder Tian just because you are the #1 alchemist in the sect. Hurry up and apologize to Elder Tian. Otherwise, I guarantee you will regret it. Who are you? You dare to bare your fangs in front of Elder Tian? You simply have no idea of death or danger." The crowd behind him roared out. They didn't hesitate to seize this chance to show their loyalty. Tianjin lifted a hand and his voice instantly vanished. "Grandmaster Yao, Do you really want to do this? Qin Yu had a sincere expression. I ask Elder Tian to believe me. If it weren't for me giving you face, you would have to compensate me for the monster beasts I caught while I was gone. Tianjin sighed. I originally wanted to make friends with Grandmaster Yao, but it seems it's a pity. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. You and I are both demonic path cultivators, so we will do things according to the rules of the demonic path. As long as Grandmaster Yao can withstand a punch from me, I will return the monster beast hunting ground to you today. I will also compensate you for the monster beasts I caught before. I wonder if Grandmaster Yao dares to agree? Qin Yu smiled. Why wouldn't I dare? As he spoke, he stepped forwards and approached like a bolt of lightning. But let's switch sides. If Elder Tian can withstand a punch from me, I will give this monster beast hunting ground to you. Tianjin laughed. Good. Then I will ask for your advice. He clenched his fists and thrust them outwards. He looked up and roared, the crackling sounds of bones exploding from his body. His originally tall and thin body instantly bulged with muscles that glowed a pale gold. He had become the embodiment of a terrifying king of hell. Between the heavens and earth, there was a loud roar. A Dharma idol appeared above Tianjin's head, its appearance similar to his true self. A terrifying aura erupted from it, overwhelming the world. The two alchemy grandmasters revealed smiles. They looked at Qin Yu with undisguised contempt. Elder Tian's ranking in the sect wasn't high, but he had a 4th-level blue sea cultivation and also cultivated the diamond demon subduing realm. His defensive abilities were far more tyrannical than his killing abilities. Even a 6th-level blue sea might not be able to break through Elder Tian's defenses, so what could Yao Bin do? Indeed, their decision to pull Tianjin along to obtain the 4th monster beast hunting ground was the correct one. So what if this surname Yao came back? He was just asking to be humiliated. The group of cultivators all revealed awe and worship in their eyes. As they looked at Qin Yu, they revealed cruel smiles, as if they could already see their bones shattering with a single punch. Surprise flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. This black demon sect was truly worthy of being one of the 12 branches of the demonic path. There were truly hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Even the unknown Tianjin had such strength, but that was all. After consolidating his Blue Sea realm, although Qin Yu hadn't tested his true strength, his intuition told him that crushing Tianjin wouldn't be a problem at all. Shua! A silver-white light flashed by, faster than lightning. It was impossible to see with the naked eye. It was sharp, destructive, and murderous. Although it only appeared for a moment, it caused the hearts of all the cultivators present to violently contract. They suddenly felt a sense of fear, as if they were meat on the chopping block. Tianjin's eyes opened wide, and his face was filled with shock and astonishment. He slowly lowered his head, and the sound of flesh tearing suddenly sounded out from his chest. Fresh blood instantly drenched his clothes, and his swollen body was like a punctured balloon that swiftly shriveled up. It was even to the extent that he was even thinner than before, and he was simply skin and bones. Starting from the chest of the Dharma idol above his head, a crack quietly appeared. Then a second crack, a third crack. The cracks densely covered the entire Dharma idol. Strong winds rose between the heavens and earth. The collapse of the Dharma idol formed a tide of spiritual strength that uprooted several large trees, turning them to dust. The two alchemy grandmasters and their disciples all screamed in panic as they were sent flying away. Although they wouldn't lose their lives, it was inevitable that they would suffer. Tianjin's lips moved. He looked up at Qin Yu, his eyes filled with awe and shock. This was because he could faintly feel that the silver light had restrained a portion of its strength at the end. Otherwise, his fate wouldn't have been as simple as having his supernatural powers broken and being wounded. Yao Bin had the strength to kill him. As soon as this thought appeared, Tianjin's heart turned icy cold. Even though he couldn't suppress his regret, he still couldn't help it. because he had a good disciple. He had lived an extremely good life in the Black Demon sect. Obtaining the fourth monster beast hunting ground was only the icing on the cake. Who would have thought that because of this matter, he would offend such a terrifying character? Tianzhen cursed the 18 generations of female ancestors of the 2 alchemy grandmasters that had encouraged him to attack. He squeezed out a smile and said, "Grandmaster Yao's cultivation is amazing. I admit defeat. The key to the monster beast hunting ground is here. I ask Grandmaster to accept it." He handed back the key and continued to say, "If I offended you before, as an apology, I am willing to pay 50 million spirit stones to purchase the captured monster beasts." Qin Yu didn't refuse. Tianzhen handed over his spirit stone card and turned to leave. He didn't even dare to say half a word. The demonic path respected strength, and the powerhouses were supreme. Even if the current sect master was his disciple, he absolutely wouldn't dare to make an enemy of such a superior existence. Otherwise, even if he was killed, he could only blame himself and no one would stand up for him. Qin Yu watched them leave in a panic. Then he looked up towards the depths of the Black Demon sect. The heaven and earth spiritual strength there was even richer. This was where the high-level figures of the sect lived. Qin Yu had spared Feng Changjing and now showed mercy to Tianzhen. This wasn't because Qin Yu was soft-hearted, but because ever since he returned to the Black Demon sect, there had been something strange about the situation. Through Su Sheng, Qin Yu had learned the general gist of what had happened. Although he didn't know the true reason, it was clear that the Black Demon sect's attention towards him wasn't normal. It had to be known that it was common for cultivators to go into seclusion. In particular, once one reached the divine soul realm and above, because their lifespans would rise dramatically, it was normal for them to go into seclusion for several years or even longer. But not too long after he left the Black Demon sect, he had been thoroughly investigated. Even Tuba and Tutu had been imprisoned, and even Su Sheng, who was close to him, had suffered a calamity. Qin Yu didn't believe that there wasn't something fishy going on here. The Black Demon sect must have some unknown reason that they valued him so much. Since they valued him so much, why hadn't anyone from the Black Demon sect come to contact him since he returned? It was like they were deliberately pretending not to know and were waiting for something. His residence had been occupied, his servants had been imprisoned, and all his belongings had been carved up. It was natural for Qin Yu to be angry, and after anger came revenge, and revenge was likely to result in death. This was especially true for those of the demonic path, where killing was a common occurrence. Qin Yu wasn't sure whether or not his guess was correct, but since he had concerns, he naturally had his guard up. This was why he showed mercy. The small conflict that occurred in the fourth monster beast hunting ground spread through the entire Black Demon sect at an even more astonishing speed. In fact, the defeat of one of the sect's veteran powerhouses, Elder Tianzhen, was not a minor matter. But looking at the situation when both sides fought, there wasn't even the least bit of entanglement, and victory was decided in a single move. There weren't any serious casualties, so calling it a small conflict could be considered appropriate. But it was precisely this small conflict that caused everyone in the Black Demon sect to realize just how fierce Grandmaster Yao was. Thus, everything that happened afterwards became natural. The 2 alchemy grandmasters that occupied the 5th monster beast hunting ground didn't need Qin Yu to say anything. They took the initiative to offer up the entrance key, as well as 50 million spirit stones. If even the sect master's honorable master, Elder Tianjin, was like this, would they dare to be an exception? But as they thought about how their moment of greed had caused them to suffer a double loss, the 2 grandmasters felt bitter in their hearts, as if they had swallowed 17 or 18 yellow lotuses in a single breath. Qin Yu thought for a moment and didn't continue to visit others. Instead, he had the 2 grandmasters pass on a message. The general meaning was, those who took his things, as long as they returned them, everything would be fine and nothing would happen. Everyone could still be happy friends. As this news spread out, Many people let out long breaths of relief, a look of joy on their faces. But soon their complexions darkened. Although Grandmaster Yao Bin had said that as long as they returned their things, they could still be friends. Only an idiot would believe that. After stealing someone else's belongings and discovering that they couldn't win, they could return them and call it even? Even an idiot would know this was a delusion. Wasn't adding 30% as an apology? But this was only an apology. If they wanted to appease Grandmaster Yao Bin's anger, they needed to add another 30%. And the key point was that the strength that Grandmaster Yao Bin had revealed today was simply ridiculously strong. This was a massive thigh they could latch onto. Who didn't want to take advantage of this opportunity? If they wanted to latch onto a thigh, they first needed the Grandmaster to have a favorable impression of them. Then the question was, how much did they need to invest in order to have a favorable impression of the Grandmaster? After thinking about it, many people discovered that returning 2 times was enough, and 3 times was enough to show their face. But the problem was that although everyone knew how to do the math, their pockets couldn't bear it. In particular, those who had been smug and arrogant before couldn't even cry now. This time, it was likely that they would lose their pants. Of course, smart people were everywhere. There were also many people who were waiting for the sect to make a move. From how they had dealt with Yao Bin previously, it seemed that the sect had some opinions about him. It was just that they didn't know how many of these opinions would remain after he revealed his current cultivation. They would wait for the situation to become clear before making a decision. The chief elder was shocked. He had imagined countless possibilities, but he never imagined that the final result would be Yao Bin crushing everyone else and easily taking back everything. Although there were some conflicts throughout the entire process, no one died, so it wasn't a big deal at all. If they wanted to use this to suppress Yao Bin, they clearly didn't have the qualifications to do so. And most importantly, with the strength that Yao Bin had displayed today, could he still be suppressed? The chief elder's eyes flashed. He stood up and entered the sect's forbidden area through the transmission array. Tai Qianqiu wasn't cultivating. He nodded as he saw the chief elder arrive, his expression calm as if he weren't surprised by his arrival. The chief elder respectfully bowed. He was well aware that although the sect master was in seclusion all year round, he hadn't lost control over the sect. Sect master, Yao Bin has returned. It's just that I don't know how to deal with the current situation. I asked the sect master to give me some instructions. Tai Qianqiu didn't reply. Yao Bin's strength has indeed surpassed expectations. In the opinion of the chief elder, what level has he reached? The chief elder hesitated for a long time. Although Elder Tianjun is only at the 4th level of the Blue Sea realm, because of his supernatural abilities, even someone 2 small boundaries higher than him might not be able to injure him. Yao Bin didn't use any treasures, so I believe that his cultivation is at the 8th level of the Blue Sea realm. 8th level of the Blue Sea realm. Tai Qianqiu shook his head. I think it's more than that. He should be at the 9th level. The chief elder's eyes shook. He didn't doubt the sect master's judgment at all. 9th level. Throughout the entire land of divinity and demons, this was an absolute peak master. They could establish their own sect and become an old ancestor. If they had a lucky chance, it wouldn't be difficult to open up a territory and establish their own country. A strange light flashed in Tai Qianqiu's eyes. He lightly said, with Yao Bin's strength, whether he left the sect or attacked today can't be considered a great mistake at all. If we want to capture him, we will need an even greater crime. Otherwise, I will lose my reputation. The chief elder bowed. I asked the sect master to explain. Did the chief elder report Feng Changjing to the list? Yes, but Yao Bin was very careful and only wounded him. This isn't enough. Tai Qianqiu's lips curled up. Wounding Feng Changjing isn't anything. But what if he killed him? Even if there was a reason for this, a disciple that participated in the Demon Ascension Gate being killed is still a great crime in my demonic path. The chief elder's heart skipped a beat, as if he wanted to say something. Tai Chenchio lightly said, "I know the chief elder's scruples. But what does this have to do with us? The one who killed him was Yao Bin, drawing back 10,000 steps, even if someone suspects him. So what? Once I remove the hidden dangers in my body, I will have a chance of reaching the Calamity Immortal Realm within 10 years. The chief elder was overjoyed. Is Sect Master speaking the truth? Chief elder, have you ever seen me say something I'm not certain of? Chapter 474. It was said that the demonic bloodline, the power of shadow, had an extremely sharp perception. Thus, Feng Changjing, who was in seclusion recovering from his wounds, found it hard to calm his mind. This sort of feeling had appeared in his memories before. It often meant that he was about to encounter some bad situation. Feng Changjing's first thought was that Yao Bin didn't want to let him go. Although he seemed magnanimous today, the truth was that he didn't want to attack in front of everyone and bear a crime that he couldn't wash away. This person wanted to secretly attack him. Feng Changjing's heart skipped a beat and panic appeared in his eyes. If it were anyone else, even if they were stronger than him and had the power of the demonic bloodline, they still wouldn't be able to silently kill him. But Yao Bin was different. Although he didn't know what the demonic bloodline in his body was, there was no doubt that the power of this bloodline could completely suppress him. Once the shadow bloodline was suppressed, he would become blind and deaf. In addition to his severe wounds, killing him wouldn't be difficult at all. Come. Feng Changjing gathered all of his subordinates. These were masters sent to him by his family in order to prevent any accidents. After arranging everything, Feng Changjing's heart calmed down a little. But after a moment of hesitation, he took out a jade slip and marked it with a divine sense message. Kacha! The jade slip was crushed. This was a delayed message. If he died, it would immediately be sent out. I hope I'm just overthinking things. Feng Changjing whispered to himself. His complexion changed. Who is it? He fiercely turned around and his aura instantly erupted, but it was already too late. A palm came from behind him and pressed against the back of his head. Feng Changjing froze where he was, and the light in his eyes slowly faded away. He tried to turn his head to see if his judgment was correct, but in the end he couldn't and died. A temporary message had just been stored when it was sent out because of the death of its host. Now it's perfect. A low whisper sounded out in the room and then vanished. Besides Feng Changjing's corpse, there was no other trace. Qin Yu entered the dungeon and visited Tuba and Tutu. They had just washed up and were respectfully invited to a table to eat. Seeing the two of them eating and drinking, it was clear they hadn't suffered any serious injuries. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. You've worked hard during this period. Tuba and Tutu knelt on the ground, their faces filled with ecstasy as they kissed the earth and cried tears of joy. The cultivators in the dungeon were shocked. These barbarians were truly loyal. How could they know that Qin Yu's safety concerned the entire Titan tribe? In Tuba and Tutu's hearts, his safety was even more important than their own lives. Qin Yu's heart warmed. Although there were other reasons for this feeling of being worried about by others was really good. After all, although the land of divinity and demons was vast, how many people truly cared about him? Subconsciously, he thought of Ningliang. That silly girl should be one of them. When he escaped from Four Seasons City, she had clearly been kept in the dark. She was likely heartbroken, right? However, this was also good. After thinking that he was already dead, after a moment of grief, he would eventually be able to walk out of the shadow. This was not necessarily a bad result. Tuba grinned. Master, there is no need to worry. Our skin is thick and our flesh is thick. We don't care about a little bit of suffering. Look, don't you think Tuba and I have become much whiter? If we return to the tribe now, the two of us will definitely be pursued by those women who are infatuated with pretty boys. Qin Yu smiled and didn't say anything. In fact, he knew that it was impossible for Tuba and Tutu to be as relaxed as they said they were. But there were some things that didn't need to be said clearly. Su Sheng's matter is the first. The 2 barbarian warriors under my command are the second. As for the others that were implicated because of me, they are the third." Chinyu smiled, not saying anything. In fact, he knew that it was impossible for Tuba and Tutu to be as relaxed as they said they were. But there were some things that didn't need to be said clearly. Su Sheng's matter is the first. My 2 barbarian warriors are the second. There are also some other people that were implicated because of me. That is the third. It is clear that the dungeon is the place that I hate the most after returning. So, you had best think of a way to satisfy all those you hurt. If they are satisfied, then this matter will end here. But if they aren't satisfied, then you will feel extremely sad." The steward behind him trembled like a sieve. As he thought about the losses they would suffer, he even had the thought of dying. Yes, don't worry. I will definitely satisfy the Grandmaster." Losing money to avoid calamity. Losing money to avoid calamity. As long as people were safe, everything could be recovered. The steward rejoiced in his heart. This was because he had experienced far too many slaughters. The victors of the demonic path often didn't have much mercy. Thus, he had developed an extremely cautious temperament. But who would have thought that he would make a mistake this time? The steward could feel the hateful gazes from behind him. He sighed inwardly. He knew that the days when he ruled over the dungeon would soon be over, and he would never return. However, the most important matter right now was to find a way to obtain Su Sheng's forgiveness. With his ability to poison people after learning about the current situation, even an idiot would know that saying that Su Sheng had opened his mouth like a lion was being too lenient. This little brat, it was a mistake not to drown him in a basin of water. The steward's heart filled with sorrow. "Chin, you didn't bring Tuba and Tutu away, since the sect had ordered them to be imprisoned. Then waiting for the sect to release them was the best choice." Moreover, looking at the sneering expressions on their faces as they stared at the group of leaders in the dungeon, he feared that they might not be willing to leave now. As he left the dungeon, he was thinking about when the Black Demon sect would contact him, what excuse they would use, and what sort of attitude they would have. But he never imagined that before he returned to his dwelling, he would receive news of Feng Changjing's death. He stood there in a daze for a moment. Qin Yu seriously considered the possibility of bringing Tuba and Tutu out of the Black Demon sect. Or could he hide in the space of his status token and wait until things calmed down before secretly escaping? But in the end, he decided to wait a bit longer and see just what the Black Demon sect wanted. This was because Qin Yu couldn't think of any reason why the Black Demon sect would go to such lengths to deal with him. A single stone stirred up 1,000 waves. Countless mourning faces turned into smiles. In particular, after the news that Feng Changjing had entered the Demon Ascension Gate's name list was confirmed, their smiles rose to the max. In the dungeon, the chief steward tried his best to maintain his composure. He coldly glanced at the 2 barbarians who were sleeping soundly after eating and drinking their fill. With a sneer, he turned and left. Behind him, the other stewards, who had been filled with deep hatred and bitterness, were now all smiling like chrysanthemums. They began to flatter and flatter the chief steward. The chief steward disdainfully thought, "Humph, humph, I knew it. With my fiery eyes, how could I have made a mistake?" Within the sect, there were definitely people who disliked Yao Bin. If he killed Feng Changjing, would the Feng family let him off? If he killed a participant of the Demon Ascension Gate, would the demonic path send down thunder? In short, this surname Yao was completely finished. The chief elder's face was as cold as ice, and his eyes were as cold as the midwinter wind, making one feel as if they had fallen into an icy lake. "Yao Bin, you are suspected of killing Feng Changjing. Immediately surrender yourself and accept investigation." Qin Yu sat in a place that had just been a lively banquet not too long ago. He looked up at the bright, full moon above his head and put down the wine cup in his hands. "Chief Elder, are you sure you want the atmosphere to become so stiff? I am a rather sensitive person. Who knows when I might suddenly go berserk? At that time, the situation might not be salvageable. The chief elder had no expression. "Are you threatening me?" Qin Yu smiled. "I don't dare. I am only speaking the truth." The chief elder was silent for several breaths of time. Then he coldly said, "All of you leave. Without my permission, no one is allowed to approach." Behind him, a group of black-robed punishment division cultivators bowed. Then they dispersed like a tide, submerging into the shadows and vanishing from sight. Qin Yu gestured with his hand. "Chief, please sit." He looked around. Or perhaps I should ask the Lord Sect Master to come out, lest others say that I am too insolent and inconsiderate in my hospitality. The chief elder's pupils shrank and a bit more coldness appeared in his eyes. But before he could say anything, a smile rose up. "Yao Bin, I really didn't underestimate you." Tai Qianqiu walked out from behind a mulberry tree. Qin Yu lowered his head and drank some wine, a bit of shock in his eyes. If it weren't for the soul-summoning bell trembling, he wouldn't have discovered the aura of this black demon, Sect Master. This person's strength was far greater than he imagined. He likely already had a peak blue sea cultivation. But when he looked up, Qin Yu's expression was light. He gestured and said, "Sect Master, please sit." Tai Qianqiu strode forward and sat down. He picked up a jug of wine and poured himself a full cup. Then he drank it all in a single gulp and smiled. "This is truly good wine. No wonder Grandmaster Yao was entertaining guests here so late at night." This hospitality was clearly to wait. Qin Yu took out a third wine cup. "I didn't think the chief elder would also be here today. I have been a bit neglectful." The chief elder had no expression. "I am not good at drinking wine." He stood behind Tai Qianqiu and closed his eyes, looking like a statue. Qin Yu smiled, not bothering with him any further. "Lord Sect Master, you have to attend to numerous affairs every day, and your time is incomparably precious. Let's not beat around the bush. Just what do you want from me?" Tai Qianqiu reached out a hand. "I like your direct personality. I think you should be aware that it was I who brought Yao Bin back to the Black Demon Sect. So my understanding of him is far greater than the average person's." His eyes brightened. "But I wonder, just who are you?" The chief elder's eyes shot open, a look of shock on his face. Qin Yu stopped pouring wine. He clapped his hands. "Lord Sect Master is wise, but I really am Yao Bin, an alchemist of the Black Demon Sect. What do you think?" Tai Qianqiu suddenly laughed. "That's right, you are Yao Bin." His eyes were deep. "Then, looking at how I saved your life in the past, there is something I hope Grandmaster Yao can agree to." Qin Yu said, "Sect Master, please speak." Tai Qianqiu said, "In truth, it's very simple. In the early years, my sect was plotted against by others. Although I managed to kill a powerful enemy and preserve my life, there were still hidden dangers left behind in my body. Not too long ago, I found a method that might be able to resolve these hidden dangers. But I will need to borrow the assistance of several poisons. Grandmaster Yao's detoxification methods are first class in the world. If you can help me, my sect will have no worries." Qin Yu bitterly smiled. He finally understood where the problem was. In the end, it was because he had been in the limelight too much and had fallen into Tai Qianqiu's eyes. Indeed, acting cool had its risks. He had to be careful when acting cool. But it was too late to regret it now. So he only thought about it for a moment before suppressing it. "So that's how it is. I thank Sect Master for dispelling my doubts. But as long as Sect Master asks, I will naturally agree. Why would I need to cause such a ruckus?" Tai Qianqiu didn't deny it. "This is where I must apologize to Grandmaster Yao. The method to resolve the hidden dangers in my body is extremely dangerous, so the progress will be slow. Moreover, once it begins, there is no way to stop it. I estimate that in 3 years, the hidden dangers in my body will be resolved, so—" Qin Yu had no expression. So, I cannot participate in the Demon Ascension Gate? At this point, the truth was revealed. The chief elder sneered. The grace of saving your life is greater than the heavens. Since you are Yao Bin, you should naturally repay the sect master's favor in the past. Do you still dare to harbor any resentment in your heart? Tai Qianqiu waved his hand. In this matter, I was indeed in the wrong. Once the hidden dangers in my body are resolved, I guarantee that I will give Grandmaster Yao a good fortune no less than the Demon Ascension Gate. Moreover, 100 years from now, when the Demon Ascension Gate reopens, I guarantee that you will be able to enter the demonic path. Qin Yu took a deep breath. Sect Master, can't you wait until the Demon Ascension Gate reopens to deal with the hidden dangers in your body? Tai Qianqiu lightly said. My natural disposition is to be cautious, and I like to have everything under my control. What I fear the most is unnecessary troubles. If Grandmaster Yao enters the demonic path, there will be far too many changes, so I must apologize. As he apologized, his eyes revealed a faint chill. It was clear that there was no room for discussion in this matter. Chapter 475. Tai Qianqiu stood up and cupped his hands together. Thank you, Grandmaster Yao. I guarantee that you will not regret the decision you made today. Qin Yu lightly said, Whether or not I regret it, only time will tell. As for Feng Changjing's death, Tai Qianqiu smiled. Grandmaster Yao, rest assured that I will handle things appropriately and not allow you to be harassed. Qin Yu nodded. That's good. He didn't thank him, because there was no need to do so to begin with. If it weren't for Tai Qianqiu's schemes, how could he have fallen into such a situation? The chief elder's complexion sank, but before he could speak, he was stopped by Tai Qianqiu. I will prepare everything in a few days. Before then, if Grandmaster Yao needs anything, please feel free to tell me. It's getting late, so I won't disturb Grandmaster's rest any longer. His body submerged into the shadows. Tai Qianqiu's smile faded away. Keep a close eye on Yao Bin. I don't want any mistakes to occur in this matter. The chief elder's heart chilled. He respectfully nodded. Qin Yu watched as Tai Qianqiu and Tai Qianqiu left. Then he turned and entered the main hall. The moment the doors closed, his complexion paled. In the situation just now, he had no choice but to agree. But it was impossible for him to give up on the Demon Ascension Gate as Tai Qianqiu hoped. 100 years was far too long for someone like Qin Yu, who had only cultivated for several dozen years. Ningling was in the immortal sect, and although her life wasn't in danger, he didn't know what the exact situation was. Qin Yu couldn't wait. Even if it was a year, he still wouldn't be able to endure it. Tai Qianqiu was unfathomably deep. He had at least a peak blue sea cultivation. As the master of one of the 12 branches of the demonic path, the Black Demon Sect, he must have some hidden cards in his hands. Fighting with him wasn't a wise decision. Drawing back 10,000 steps, even if Qin Yu racked his brains and escaped from the Black Demon Sect, with the Demon Ascension Gate about to open, what status could he use to participate? It was already too late to make any further plans. Qin Yu took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. It seemed that there was only one path left, and that was to have Tai Qianqiu change his mind on his own initiative. However, this person had gone to great lengths to not hesitate to kill Feng Changjing in order to frame him. In addition to the hidden dangers within his body, wanting Tai Qianqiu to change his mind would be difficult. After eating and drinking their fill, Tuba and Tutu woke up to discover that they had been imprisoned once more. The dungeon cultivators that were panic-stricken, like chickens, suddenly became arrogant once more. The two glanced at each other, a bit of restlessness growing in their hearts. Tuba glanced at Tutu, and Tutu slightly nodded. Then he loudly cursed out loud, saying that all of you are just courting death, and so on. Then someone jumped out and explained to them exactly what had happened. Hearing that His Highness had only killed one person, the two giants immediately felt relieved. They lazily lay down on the withered grass, their eyes glancing at the cultivators in the dungeon outside, occasionally flashing a cold light. What a bunch of idiots. His Highness had always planned before taking action. Since he dared to kill this person, he had absolute confidence that he wouldn't get into any trouble. Moreover, even if there is trouble, do you think a bullshit Feng family that popped out of nowhere is worthy of flapping its wings in front of His Highness? Ridiculous. Sure enough, it didn't take long before one of the dungeon cultivators rushed in with a long face. The other dungeon cultivators shivered, and many of them began to cry. You can't play with people like that. The plot keeps changing. But where is the scriptwriter? Come out, and I'll beat you to death. If you mess around like this, how can we live? Tuba and Tutu chuckled coldly. No matter how the people outside nearly bent their backs and kowtowed to the ground, they didn't have any intention of leaving. When Qin Yu appeared in the dungeon, he glanced around and guessed what had happened. It was different from yesterday when his heart was restless and he acted with his hands and feet tied. Now that he knew the truth and was sure that Tai Qianxia wouldn't harm him before the hidden dangers in his body were eliminated, Qin Yu's eyes turned icy cold. Another important reason was that he was in a really bad mood right now. It would seem that everyone did not take this Yao's words to heart. In that case, let us calculate what you all will have to pay. A light voice reverberated through the dark dungeon. The legs of all the dungeon cultivators weakened, and they nearly fell to the ground. My lord, how about you leave this matter to me? I will definitely satisfy you. Su Sheng rushed in with a ruddy complexion, a completely different person from yesterday. It could be seen that he had spent the night happily. But was the dark-skinned cultivator in the breeding garden still in good condition? When they saw Su Sheng's figure clearly, the people in the dungeon, who were already trembling, couldn't endure the psychological pressure any longer, and they fell to the ground on the spot with a plop. There were even a few who were mentally weak who had rolled their eyes and started foaming at the mouth. Su Sheng spat, not a hint of sympathy on his face. Stop pretending. We're all old acquaintances here. Whatever you know, I know. He swept his eyes around. Where are you old farts? Hurry up and roll out here to greet Grandmaster Yao. As he spoke, he turned around, a flattering smile on his face. Although this vile and rampant appearance was a bit disgusting, it actually improved Qin Yu's mood by a great deal. The chief steward was carried out, his body shaking like a sieve. It was said that when he was captured, this old fellow was lying on top of his new concubine and was so frightened that he bent over. He feared it would be difficult for him to walk out of this shadow for the rest of his life. Of course, without accident, the chief steward likely wouldn't have another chance to display his might in the future. Qin Yu nodded. Su Sheng's arrogance suddenly rose by several levels. He bared his teeth like a vicious dog. Old thing, you never thought there would be a day like this, right? Tell me, how do you plan on apologizing to the Grandmaster? Let me warn you, don't play any tricks. In the entire Black Demon sect, if I say I'm well informed, no one will dare to say they're first. Young Master, this was a title he hadn't heard for a long time. Qin Yu's thoughts were instantly pulled away. He thought back to the time when he was incomparably simple and honest. Later on, he turned into a deep and profound brother. Was he doing well? But in an instant, Qin Yu cleanly restrained his thoughts and focused his attention on the most critical point. Well-informed, looking at Su Sheng's back, a thoughtful light flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. The chief steward was well aware that he no longer had a chance. If he played any more tricks, even if he was killed by Yao Bin, he would have died in vain. Why? Didn't he see that Feng Changjing had died and this surname Yao was still alive and kicking? Although he didn't know the inside story, this didn't stop this old dog from smelling something dark. Like a bamboo tube, the chief steward handed over all of his wealth. He stuck out his skinny butt and lay on the ground, tears streaming down his face. He begged Grandmaster Yao to be merciful and give him a chance to live. When the other stewards saw this, they instantly understood that the situation was hopeless. How could they still dare to resist stubbornly? All of them knelt down neatly and sacrificed their wealth to save their lives. This transaction was slightly painful, but it was still very worth it. Su Xing opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but in the end he cursed out loud. Couldn't these bastards have the slightest bit of backbone or hope for a fluke? You've made such a thorough confession without leaving me any leeway. How can I show myself in front of Grandmaster Yao? You bastards, you bastards. Tuba, Tutu, I'll leave this place to you. Qin Yu turned and walked away. Su Sheng, come with me. Su Sheng was overjoyed. He eagerly followed. There was an interrogation room in the dungeon. Qin Yu pushed open the door and walked in. As he looked around, surprise filled his eyes. This was because he was familiar with this place. In the past, he had almost been dismembered by Su Xing here. Behind him, Su Sheng subconsciously shrank his neck, nearly crying. He thought to himself, why did you come here? Please don't be impulsive and kill me because of your past hatred. Master, I had eyes but failed to see in the past and offended you. Since then, I have been tormented by remorse every night. I know I was wrong, but I beg you to be magnanimous and not lower yourself to my level. I really... Qin Yu bitterly smiled. What was this all about? Shut up. I have something to ask you. Yao Bin instantly fell silent, a pitiful expression on his face. Qin Yu ignored him. Do you know of any methods in the Black Demon sect that can help a person obtain a very, very high status? Yao Bin blinked his eyes. This, how high are you talking about? Qin Yu said very high. Yao Bin, there was no way to continue this conversation. Luckily, Qin Yu continued. So high that even the Black Demon sect master has to respect them. Yao Bin sucked in a breath of cold air. His intuition told him that there was something here, something major. If he could help Grandmaster Yao solve this problem, he would definitely gain some points in his heart. If he could hold onto this thick thigh, it wouldn't be difficult for him to reach the peak of his life. But in the sect master was supreme, and there was no one that could contend with his will. To obtain the sect master's respect, another interpretation was to become an existence on the same level as him. This was because, in this world, only by being on the same level could there be respect. But this was impossible. Master, I do know a great deal of information about the sect, but if you want to stand on the same level as the sect master, this is impossible. Su Xing had a nervous expression. The demonic path places the greatest importance on hierarchy. The dignity of those at the top cannot be touched. This is especially true in the Black Demon sect, which is one of the 12 branches of the demonic path. If you want to stand on the same level as the sect master, there are only 3 paths you can take. The first is that you have strength that surpasses the sect master. The demonic path respects the strong, and if you are stronger, then you will naturally obtain respect. The second is that you become a demonic path elder. According to convention, the rank of a demonic path elder is equal to that of a branch sect master. Seeing Qin Yu's complexion become increasingly gloomy, Su Xing gulped. The third is that Grandmaster becomes the sect master of the other demonic path branches. Su Sheng paused, his eyes cloudy and uncertain. Qin Yu asked, What are you thinking of? Master, I remember a rumor in the sect, but I cannot judge whether it is true or not. Speak. Su Xing clenched his teeth. Not too long ago, Grandmaster and Jiang Taisho had a gambling match to detoxify poison. Do you remember the sealed pagoda that sealed countless poisons? Qin Yu lightly said, Of course I remember. His eyes flashed. Could it be that the sealed pagoda? Su Xing nodded. That's right. A long, long time ago, the demonic path originally had 13 branches, but now only 12 remain. The one that disappeared was the strange and terrifying Myriad Poison sect. In the rumors, the sealed pagoda is the most precious inherited treasure of the Myriad Poison sect. As long as anyone can reach the end of the sealed pagoda, they can obtain its recognition and re-establish the myriad poison sect. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. In other words, as long as I become the master of the sealed pagoda, that is the same as becoming the master of the myriad poison sect, I will be able to stand on equal footing with Tai Qianqiu. In theory, that is indeed the case. But the myriad poison sect has perished for a long time, and the 12 subordinate branches of the demonic path have stabilized themselves. I fear that they do not wish to see the myriad poison sect reappear. Moreover, the poisons in the sealed pagoda are incomparably terrifying. Master, you should be well aware that completing the master recognition of the sealed pagoda is far too dangerous. Su Sheng cautiously said. He had just risen from the ashes of a serf. He didn't want his backer to inexplicably play him to death. Thinking of this, Su Sheng suddenly felt deep regret. If he knew this would happen, he wouldn't have mentioned the sealed pagoda. What could he do now? Chapter 476. The chief elder was well aware that if something happened to Yao Bin again, he would surely be beaten up miserably by the enraged sect master. Thus, the degree to which he monitored Qin Yu was so strict that it made one's hair stand on end. At the start, the punishment division's black-robed cultivators tried to hide their actions, but they soon discovered that this was futile. It was unknown how they asked for instructions, but they soon became brazen. Thus, when Qin Yu aimlessly walked through the black demon sect's entrance, behind him, to the left, to the right, there would always be a trail of black clothes passing by. The chief elder frowned. Yao Bin is wandering around the entrance. Yes, this subordinate still cannot see what Grandmaster Yao's goal is. The chief elder's eyes were dark and uncertain. Keep a close eye on him. Report back at any time. The punishment division cultivators bowed and left. The chief elder's complexion was ice cold. Although he wasn't afraid that Yao Bin would play any tricks in the sect, he still felt uneasy in his heart. He clenched his teeth, his voice like a bone-chilling wind. Yao Bin, I want to see just what you can do. The blue stone path was nearly covered by the branches and leaves on both sides. There was a thick layer of leaves on the ground. It seemed that very few people passed through here. Qin Yu looked around several times. He turned and walked down the path. When he emerged from the other end, his black robes were covered in dried leaves. It wasn't here. He stood where he was for a moment. He felt as if his thoughts had wandered into the wrong place. Su Sheng had only said that the sealed pagoda was in the black demon sect. Since no one knew what it was, there was no need for it to be hidden. Like a bolt of lightning, Qin Yu suddenly felt something in his heart. He looked up. This was a small square surrounded by lush trees. There were many black demon sect cultivators under the shade of the trees. Some were lazily sitting down, enjoying the scenery. Some had their eyes closed in meditation, and some were walking back and forth on the dried leaves. He was a bit surprised. This was because there were very few cultivators that indulged themselves and didn't waste their lives cultivating. In other words, this was an extremely rare sight. What Qin Yu didn't know was that this small square was extremely famous in the Black Demon sect. This was because it seemed to contain some sort of invisible strength that could help cultivators break through their shackles. Over the countless years, there were many cultivators that made breakthroughs in this small square. Although it wasn't much when placed in the massive population, everyone still thought that they might be the next lucky person. Thus, every time his cultivation wasn't going smoothly, there would always be people who would come here. This was what led to the situation Qin Yu saw today. Of course, Qin Yu didn't pay too much attention to these things today. His eyes slowly swept over the small square. The slightly damaged floor tiles, the fallen leaves piled up in the corner, the flourishing grass and trees around, and the small white tower that was about 3 to 4 meters tall at the edge of the square, half of its body covered by vines. Everything was normal. Qin Yu stopped at the edge of the square and carefully looked at it. Then he sighed with emotion. The sealed pagoda really was a pagoda. What seemed like a useless statement was actually an indescribable shock when he saw this beautiful little white pagoda that was wrapped in lush green vines and hidden deep within the branches. The white tip of the pagoda was washed clean by the rain. Under the sunlight, it reflected a hazy halo, pure and white. Perhaps it was because he knew that a poison that could cause a catastrophe was sealed within it. That was why he found it hard to accept that it was harmless at this moment. Qin Yu stood beneath the pagoda, his eyes full of praise. This was truly worthy of being the legendary inheritance treasure of the myriad poison sect. It was only when he arrived at the square that he sensed an unusual aura. And this feeling was because of the soul summoning bell in his soul space. By himself, even if he stood in front of the sealed pagoda, he still wouldn't be able to discover anything. On the edge of the small square, several Punishment Division cultivators looked left and right, but they didn't find anything wrong. But the order they received was to report to their superiors at any time, so this matter soon entered the ears of the chief elder. In the long corridor, the dignified chief elder immediately turned green as he heard where Qin Yu was. The sealed pagoda was one of the Black Demon sect's greatest secrets. The number of people that had the qualifications to know everything could be counted on one hand. As the sect's chief elder, a high-level character, second only to the sect master, he naturally knew of this matter. If it was said that Qin Yu just happened to be walking around today and also happened to be standing in front of the sealed pagoda, then that was far too much of a fucking coincidence. In the blink of an eye, the chief elder recalled everything that had happened. It was clear that Yao Bin didn't want to be manipulated by the sect master and wanted to resist through the sealed pagoda. What a madman! The Black Demon sect had obtained the sealed pagoda for tens of thousands of years. They clearly knew that it was a peak supreme treasure and also represented the status of the 13th branch of the demonic path. So why hadn't they tried? But there had never been a single time when there was even the slightest hope of success. Everyone that had tried to subdue the sealed pagoda had ultimately been destroyed by the poison. No, if Yao Bin wanted to die, then he couldn't do anything about it. But now was not the time, otherwise the sect master would send him to hell and bury him along with Yao Bin. You bastard! With a roar, the ground beneath the chief elder collapsed, and the long corridor was instantly blown apart. His figure shot into the skies, leaving behind a stunned Punishment Division cultivator. He didn't know what had happened, but his lips soon began to shiver. If the chief elder lost his composure like this, then there was absolutely something major that had occurred. Within the Punishment Division, the shrill sound of alarms spread out in all directions. Small square. Grandmaster Yao could be said to be the most famous character in the Black Demon sect right now. First, he killed Feng Changjing, and then he trampled over the veteran powerhouse Elder Tianjin. And most importantly, he was still safe and sound up until now. This was extremely terrifying. The Black Demon sect cultivator who first discovered Qin Yu stepping into the small square had his jaw drop open. His mind buzzed, and all of the enlightenment he had felt just now instantly vanished without a trace. But at this time, he didn't have any thoughts of being angry. There was only one thought in his mind. Was it too late for him to run away now? This surname, Yao, was currently an evil star. He had heard that the dungeon had already suffered a calamity. Looking at those black-hearted and merciless dungeon stewards, he could imagine just what sort of inhumane torture they had experienced. Now that Yao Bin had appeared in the small square, it was clear that he was about to stir up trouble. Whoever wanted to stay here was a bastard. But the key question was, if he left first, would this surname Yao bear a grudge against him? It was rumored that this person was narrow-minded and vengeful. Once someone bore a grudge against him, they feared they would die a miserable death. Because of these thoughts, more and more cultivators discovered Qin Yu standing in front of the small white pagoda. Their eyes were wide with panic, but their feet seemed to take root and they didn't dare to move at all. What nonsense! If no one else moved and I left by myself, it would be hard not to be remembered. Suddenly, the sound of breaking air echoed out from the distance. Before he arrived, strong winds were stirred up as he flew, sweeping through the entire square. Yao Bin! His shout was filled with anger. The aura of a superior being seemed to press down on one's chest, making it hard for one to breathe. The chief elder's figure landed in the small square. Countless black demon sect cultivators nearly cried out in the wind. But even the chief elder had appeared this time. This matter definitely wasn't small. Damn, please don't implicate me. Qin Yu turned around. Chief, what is the meaning of this? The chief elder nearly gnashed his teeth. Yao Bin, you must think this through. There are some things that once you start, you can't turn back. He took a deep breath and slowed down his voice. You are still young and have plenty of time to squander. So why bother with this moment? Qin Yu smiled. What is the chief elder saying? I don't understand. The chief elder roared, You stubborn fool! Hurry and come back. You are seeking death. Qin Yu was suddenly enlightened. So the chief elder was referring to this small pagoda. I was only curious as to how something like the sealed pagoda could appear so harmless. I stopped to take a few more glances. Chief elder, there is no need to worry. In the small square, all of the panic-stricken black demon sect cultivators heard these words. They nearly stopped breathing. Sealed pagoda, oh my mother! At this time, how could they care about anything else? If they stayed here any longer, that was the same as seeking death. Whoosh, whoosh, the black demon sect cultivators moved like rabbits as they fled from the small square. But before they could escape, a dense crowd of punishment department cultivators appeared in front of them. Blue veins popped up on the chief elder's forehead. Capture everyone. Do not let a single one escape. The sealed pagoda was a legend within the black demon sect. Although everyone knew that the sect had such a terrifying treasure, just what was it? Where was it? This had always been a secret. But now, this secret had almost been completely exposed by Qin Yu. The chief elder was enraged, but his heart couldn't help but sink. Yao Bin's attitude wasn't good at all. When the punishment department's people moved, everyone in the small square didn't dare to say a single word of nonsense. They obediently allowed themselves to be captured and escorted away. However, tears were already flowing down their hearts. If a stone fell from the sky, it just had to hit my head. This was probably how these people felt right now, feeling aggrieved and helpless. The chief elder took a deep breath and coldly said, Yao Bin, I don't know where you obtained this information from, but since everyone is well aware of it, then let's be frank. I will give you some data. For the last tens of thousands of years, the sealed pagoda has remained in the black demon sect. According to the complete records, the sect has carried out a total of 137 attempts. Of those who tried, the strongest were Peak Blue Seas and over 30 alchemy experts. As for the others, they all had their own brilliant points. What they all had in common was their astonishing divine sense and tyrannical mortal bodies. Some of them even awakened powerful bloodlines. But without exception, all of these people failed and died miserable deaths. Thus, in these past years, the Black Demon sect has stopped trying. Ask yourself, can you be stronger than the 137 people that my Black Demon sect has chosen over the last tens of thousands of years? If you want the sealed pagoda to recognize you as its master, that is an absolute certainty of death. Yao Bin, is it really worth it for you to participate in the Demon Ascension Gate? Qin Yu was silent for a moment. Chief, your words are clear, but I still want to try. The chief elder roared, You are courting death. His eyes were cold and gloomy. Don't forget, this is the Black Demon sect. What I don't allow, you cannot do. Qin Yu nodded. The chief elder is right, but I have noticed something. From the moment you arrived until now, no matter how angry or irritated you are, you haven't taken even half a step forwards. It seems as if there is an invisible barrier around you in this small square. My guess is that this might be related to the sealed pagoda in front of us. What do you think?" The chief elder's pupils shrank. He tried his best not to reveal a shocked expression, but he was well aware that his stiff expression already explained everything. Chinyu smiled. "Indeed, my guess is correct. The sealed pagoda was the 13th branch of the demonic path, the inheritance treasure of the myriad poison sect. Its highest standard was clearly to select a qualified master and re-establish the myriad poison sect. Although he didn't know why the sealed pagoda would appear in the Black Demon sect, it was clear that the Black Demon sect only had the right to preserve it. If someone tried to recognize a master, then whether they failed or not, this was a situation that the sealed pagoda was willing to see. If they tried to stop them, that would violate the highest standard of the sealed pagoda. The truth was that after saying so much, he had to thank the soul summoning bell in his soul space. Through it, Qin Yu could feel the faint fluctuations of the sealed pagoda's aura. These fluctuations indicated that the sealed pagoda was observing him. In addition to the chief elder's actions, this was what allowed Qin Yu to make his previous judgment. Now, it seemed that his judgment was correct. As long as he stood beneath the sealed pagoda, there was no one that could stop him from attempting to recognize a master. A sealed pagoda going crazy was not a situation that the Black Demon sect wished to see. Just as the chief elder was about to speak, he was interrupted by someone. "Yao Bin, you are indeed smart. But smart people are often too confident, and when they are overconfident, they will die." Tai Qianqiu's figure appeared. His expression was like that of an ancient well. But as long as one was in a high position, they would be able to maintain a calm demeanor. Perhaps at this time he wished that he could tear Qin Yu to pieces and then boil him in oil. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. "Greetings, sect master." He stood up, a helpless expression on his face. "I am well aware of how terrifying the sealed pagoda is. If I had any other choice, I wouldn't be willing to take such a risk. But I must participate in the Demon Ascension Gate. If the sect master doesn't allow it, then I can only resort to this method." Tai Qianqiu had a faint expression. "Is the promise that I made to you not worth 100 years of time?" Qin Yu said. "Perhaps in the eyes of others, the sect master is extremely benevolent, but I am not willing." Tai Qianqiu was silent for a long time. "Grand Master Yao, everything can be discussed. If you wish to participate in the Demon Ascension Gate, then it isn't necessarily impossible for me to allow it. How about we sit down and talk?" Qin Yu shook his head. "I do not trust the sect master." With these words, it was impossible to persuade him otherwise. The chief elder was enraged. "Yao Bin, don't be too insolent. Do you really think that the Black Demon sect can't do anything to you?" Qin Yu seriously thought about it. "Perhaps there is, but it will be very troublesome to use such methods. Moreover, there might even be serious consequences." "You." The chief elder's face flushed red. Tai Qianqiu's voice was cold. "It seems that Grandmaster Yao has already made up his mind. Since that is the case, I will no longer try to persuade you. But I must remind Grandmaster that if you feel that something is wrong, immediately withdraw. I might be able to protect your life." Qin Yu cupped his hands together. "Thank you, sect master." He turned and stepped forwards. With the sealed pagoda in front of him, ripples appeared in space. It was like an invisible gate had opened and Qin Yu's figure submerged within. The chief elder bowed. "Sect master, please punish me." Tai Qianqiu coldly sneered. "If Yao Bin dies, I will." He looked at the sealed pagoda, his eyes gloomy. But in this gloominess, there was also a bit of hesitation. Yao Bin's cultivation was tyrannical, and he also knew just how dangerous the sealed pagoda was. Yet he still insisted on trying in this situation. Could it be that he was truly confident? But how was this possible? As for what the situation within the sealed pagoda was like after the myriad poison sect was destroyed, no one knew. This was because anyone that entered afterwards and attempted to complete the process of recognizing a master had all perished within. Qin Yu frowned. He swept his eyes around, not relaxing his guard at all because of the little blue lamp's existence. The little blue lamp possessed a tyrannical immunity to poison, but it couldn't help Qin Yu resist other attacks. The myriad poison sect's supreme treasure likely possessed more than just poison. A dusky world entered his field of vision. Countless masses of air floated in the air, and they were so quiet that they seemed like numerous, enormous bubbles, giving off a dreamlike feeling. The deathly silence within the sealed pagoda wasn't beyond Qin Yu's expectations, but it was a bit too quiet. Before this thought fell, a gust of wind suddenly blew up in this dusky world. Countless masses of air floated in the air, as if they were weightless. The closest mass of air approached. After a moment of hesitation, Qin Yu didn't dodge. If there was something strange in the world of the sealed pagoda, then it was clearly these masses of air. He might as well give it a try and see just what was hidden within. Taking a step back, he was at the outermost periphery of the sealed pagoda. Even if it was dangerous, it shouldn't be fatal. Puff! The moment it touched Qin Yu, the mass of air dispersed, flowing through his pores and fusing into his body. Qin Yu closed his eyes. A faint layer of black energy appeared on his face, slowly wriggling like a living creature. But soon, this layer of black gas quickly melted away like snow under the scorching sun. Qin Yu opened his eyes, a sharp light flashing within them. It really was poison. If his senses weren't wrong, this should be a type of poison called questioning heart. It could cause a cultivator's mind to fall into chaos, causing them to fall into an illusion that they couldn't extricate themselves from, eventually leading to cultivation deviation. This poison was tyrannical, but it couldn't be considered too dangerous. Even without the little blue lamp, Qin Yu could resolve it on his own. But it couldn't be forgotten that this was only the edge of the sealed pagoda. Moreover, there were so many similar masses of air in front of him that it was impossible to count them all. If it were anyone else, these moving bubbles would be enough to make it difficult for them to even take a single step forward. He tried several more times. Without exception, all of them were poisons. Qin Yu smiled. Since he had determined that these masses of air were poisons, then the seemingly terrifying road ahead of him was actually smooth and level. Shwa! Qin Yu's figure moved. Without dodging at all, he held forwards. All of the masses of air that he touched fused into his body. There was so much poison, and the toxicity was so complex and fierce that it surpassed his imagination. But as these poisons drilled into Qin Yu's body, all of their arrogance disappeared and they turned into docile lambs. They were imprisoned by an invisible strength and continuously poured into Qin Yu's right index finger, causing his fingertip to shine with a warm light and emit a halo of light. Small square. Tai Chinchio was as silent as a stone. He walked in front of the sealed pagoda. Now that Qin Yu had entered and the master recognition test had begun, he wouldn't be rejected by the treasure if he approached. With a flick of his sleeves, strong winds stirred up in the void. All of the vines were instantly stripped away, revealing the complete appearance of the sealed pagoda. The vines that had wrapped around the sealed pagoda for an unknown amount of time had shed countless leaves, but none of them were able to leave a single mark on the surface of the sealed pagoda. Now that it was exposed to the sunlight, the entire sealed pagoda began to shimmer. In the pure white light, a black that appeared at the very bottom of the sealed pagoda. Chapter 477. The chief elder's eyelids jumped up. Sovereign, there is no need to worry. Even if Yao Bin has some methods, how can he possibly subdue the sealed pagoda? Once he has tasted the bitterness of the sealed pagoda, he will naturally beg you to rescue him. Before he finished speaking, his breath caught in his throat. His eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. The black dot at the very bottom of the sealed pagoda suddenly began to move upwards. Although it was incomparably slow, This so-called slow referred to something that could be seen with the naked eye. Whether it was Tai Chinchio or the chief elder, both of them were absolute high-level figures of the Black Demon sect. They had sufficient status and were aware of all the attempts the Black Demon sect had made to the sealed pagoda for the last tens of thousands of years. They naturally understood just what sort of astonishing truth this scene represented. Of the 137 recorded attempts, even the one with the highest cultivation, the peak blue sea old ancestor, whose lifespan was nearing its end, or the one that the sect had coincidentally found 20,000 years ago, the one with the pure body that was said to be impervious to all poisons, could only reach the middle layer of the sealed pagoda. Moreover, one of them had used 24 days, while the other had used 17 days. Compared to Yao Bin, the gap between them was simply terrifying. With this speed, he might be able to reach the middle level of the sealed pagoda in less than 2 hours, right? Tai Chinchio took a deep breath. He had a feeling that, from this moment onward, the entire matter had completely escaped his control. More and more masses of air floated in the air. As Qin Yu rapidly moved forwards, they seemed to feel some sort of provocation and also seemed to be attracted to him. They gathered from all directions on their own initiative, submerging Qin Yu's figure like a poisonous storm. More and more poisons appeared and became even more terrifying. But no matter how much they ravaged Qin Yu's path, they couldn't stop him at all, much less kill him. After an unknown period of time, the mass of toxic gas that crazily rushed towards Qin Yu vanished without any warning. The hazy gray world in front of him was clean and empty, as if everything that had just occurred had been nothing but an illusion. He lifted his right hand and looked at his shining index finger. He was well aware that everything that happened was reality. Did he pass? Qin Yu looked up at the gloomy skies above him and slowly shook his head. Things were probably not that simple. Although these poisons were terrifying, as long as one was strong enough and had powerful means, it was still possible to deal with them. The Black Demon sect had spent tens of thousands of years and still hadn't been able to make the sealed pagoda recognize him as its master. How could Qin Yu dare to underestimate it in the least? Suddenly, a corner of Qin Yu's black robes rose up. He looked up into the distance and saw a black line that connected the heavens and earth. Qin Yu's pupils shrank and a dignified expression crossed his face. He thought to himself, it's coming. The black line at the end of his field of vision quickly grew thicker and larger, approaching at an astonishing speed. Along with it came an earth-shattering roar. He was close. He was close. Finally, they could clearly see that within this hurricane, there was a giant face. Its eyes surged with a green light, and its mouth spat out blood-red flames. Its face twisted as it constantly rotted and regenerated. Intruders die. With a roar, the face stretched out from the hurricane and ruthlessly swallowed at Qin Yu. From the wide-open mouth, one could see that the inside of it was scarlet red, as if there was magma burning deep underground. Qin Yu looked up. His black robes fluttered about him as he nervously opened his mouth and stepped forwards. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, his entire person was like a tiny pebble that scuttled into the huge mouth. The face returned to the hurricane. Its mouth wriggled as if it were chewing and swallowing. But soon, it emitted a shrill howl. The hurricane instantly went berserk. As it crazily spun, countless poisons were sucked into the giant face. But this wasn't able to save anything. The face constantly collapsed and collapsed. It tried to repair itself, but it couldn't make up for the terrifying swallowing power that erupted from within. With a cry of despair, the face completely shattered. Then, in several breaths of time, the entire hurricane vanished without a trace. Qin Yu's figure appeared in midair. As he looked at the empty world around him, his eyes flashed. The small square was deathly silent, although they were somewhat mentally prepared for Yao Bin's strength, as they watched helplessly as he broke into the middle level of the sealed pagoda in less than an hour. The several people that had the qualifications to come here all felt their minds go blank. Gulp! It was unknown just who gulped, but it was particularly grating in this absolute silence. The chief elder blinked his eyes with difficulty. He stubbornly stared at the black that entered the middle of the sealed pagoda. After a long time, he couldn't help but admit that this wasn't an illusion. But how was this possible? Tai Chinchio had a complex look in his eyes. The sealed pagoda had been left in the Black Demon sect for tens of thousands of years. According to the agreement, they were only its guardians. But as time passed, any Black Demon sect cultivator that had the qualifications to know the truth about the sealed pagoda naturally regarded it as a treasure that belonged to the sect. But now, perhaps its true master had appeared. In front of Chinyu was a vast sea. The sea was boundless and endless. Waves tumbled towards the shore. However, the seawater in front of him was a deathly gray, similar to the sky. Just looking at it made one feel fear. The second level of the sealed pagoda was the Sea of Poison. The entire sea was composed of countless poisons. Every drop of seawater contained poison that was enough to annihilate thousands of lives. Qin Yu had tried other methods to cross the sea. For instance, flying or using a boat. But reality proved that he had been thinking too much. This sea could only be crossed by the mortal body. Only by withstanding the corrosion of the poison could one be considered to have passed. Even though Qin Yu had regarded poisons as nothing for these past years, he still felt weak in the face of this sea of poison. Little blue lamp, everything will depend on you. You must give it your all. Putong, with a leap, Qin Yu was like a giant black fish that swam into the gray sea. He swung his tail and swam deep into the sea. The poisons contained within the sea of poison were strange and terrifying. They didn't corrode the body, but directly corroded and destroyed it. In simpler terms, the Sea of Poison was an incomparably massive sea filled with highly concentrated sulfuric acid. Even though Qin Yu's demon body had reached the monarch step, he still suffered a great deal. His hair and the surface of his skin were instantly corroded away. Luckily, he saw that the situation was far from good and hid the demon god armor within his body. Otherwise, this treasure armor that matched the demon body, and he didn't know how to use, would have been completely destroyed. However, the corrosion of the poison could only last for a brief moment before it was suppressed by the little blue lamp. Then, the terrifying abilities of the demon body would appear once more, and he would be restored to his original state. Then he would be corroded again and restored again, a samsara cycle. With the power of the demon body, this degree of minor damage wouldn't cause too much damage even if it were repeated 10,000 times. But the crux of the matter was that every time he was corroded and restored, it was a painful torture for Qin Yu. Although he couldn't personally experience this sort of pain, he could roughly imagine it. His entire body skin was instantly peeled off, and then in the next second, after it had fully regenerated, it would be peeled off a second time, a third time, a fourth time. It was simply horrifying. No matter how firm Qin Yu's will was, under the endless onslaught of pain, he couldn't help but fall into a trance and confusion. Luckily, every time his consciousness was about to sink into oblivion, the soul summoning bell would send out a fluctuation that pulled him back. It was like 10,000 years had passed. When a terrifying explosion rang out, Qin Yu was stunned for several breaths of time before he managed to regain his composure. Then he discovered that he had unknowingly arrived at some lonely island in the middle of the sea. He didn't have time to think about why there would be an island in the Sea of Poison. Qin Yu rushed out from the seawater, his flesh and blood rapidly growing back. After several breaths of time, his black hair hung down to his shoulders. With a thought, the demon god armor appeared, no different from before. But only Qin Yu knew just how long and terrifying the pain of being peeled off was. He looked at the endless sea behind him, fear in his eyes. At this time, there was another loud explosion. Qin Yu fiercely turned and looked deep into the sea. A black line appeared in his line of sight. It looked like a continent floating in the sea. Since the island had appeared, it was normal for there to be a continent. Qin Yu didn't dwell on this matter. He stared at the continent. The loud explosion came from there. Qin Yu's intuition told him that this distant continent was the key to the sealed pagoda, recognizing him as its master. But he really didn't want to experience the pain of being corroded by the seawater again. After a few hopeless attempts, Qin Yu was pleasantly surprised to discover that the restrictive power of the Sea of Poison had greatly weakened. He could just barely fly. Whoosh! A beam of light shot out from the island and shakily flew towards the continent. The closer he got to the continent, the weaker the restrictive power became. Qin Yu's speed increased along with it. Soon, the true appearance of this continent in the depths of the Sea of Poison was completely revealed to Qin Yu. His eyes widened and he was shocked. Black continent, black mountain peaks, black plants. This was a world formed entirely from darkness. But this wasn't the strangest thing. What was the most unbelievable was that this entire continent in the depths of the Sea of Poison was wrapped in a faint layer of light. This layer of light was like a cracked egg. Its surface was covered with cracks, and there were even some places that had been damaged. Suddenly, atop the black continent, a volcano erupted. Billowing black flames and black smoke rushed into the skies, condensing into a fierce skeleton. This skeleton fiercely waved the black bone spear in its hands and thrust it into the layer of light outside. Qin Yu watched as the layer of light trembled and cracks appeared where it struck. He finally understood where that loud explosion came from. The skeleton shattered, disintegrating into endless black smoke that fell to the ground and fused into it. The erupting volcano suddenly wriggled. Like a mouth, it emitted an excited roar. "Your strength is about to be exhausted. I will soon come out." The layer of light was silent, but faint traces of light gathered along the cracked surface, forming an arrow of light that ruthlessly shot into the volcano's mouth. The ground violently shook, and the entire volcano of fire instantly disintegrated. Pained roars mixed with wild laughter echoed out from deep beneath the earth. "When I escape, I will use the deaths of trillions of lives as a sacrifice." The shattered earth wriggled and rapidly restored itself. The layer of light returned to silence, but the originally weak light became even dimmer. As Qin Yu was shocked by the scene before him, faint traces of light suddenly appeared, condensing into a figure of light. Even if it was only 1,000 years earlier, I would still be overjoyed at your arrival. But it is already too late. The figure's face was blurry and its voice was neutral, but one could clearly feel the exhaustion and helplessness in every syllable. Qin Yu hesitated for a moment. "You are," the figure of light said, "the spirit of the sealed pagoda." Qin Yu looked at the continent. "Then what is it?" The figure of light faintly said, "The spirit of poison." A mistake that shouldn't have existed. After a pause, it continued, "The myriad poison sect was destroyed because of it. I have bitterly endured for tens of thousands of years, but in the end, I cannot escape collapse. When it leaves the sealed pagoda, it will become the source of calamity for the world. Trillions of lives will die because of it." Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. He seemed to have touched upon some incredible secret, but now wasn't the time to be gossiping. "What can I do?" "You can't do anything. I originally thought that those that could rush here should have enough strength. If they cooperated with me, then there might be a 30 to 40% chance of success. But now..." Before the figure of light finished speaking, a hint of disappointment flowed out. Qin Yu wasn't angry at being underestimated at all. This was because he had to admit that the spirit of the sealed pagoda and the spirit of poison both possessed the strength to absolutely roll over him. "Leave. Tell the people of the Black Demon sect to immediately relocate their sect. Evacuate all life within a radius of 10 million miles. I won't be able to last much longer." "Wait," Qin Yu decisively said. "Do you think that the Black Demon sect will obediently abandon their sect that they have managed for countless years and relocate because of a few words from me? Even if they are willing, can all life within a radius of 10 million miles really be evacuated? I fear that in the end, it will still be a catastrophe. The figure of light fell silent. I have already tried my best, Chinyu loudly said. Perhaps you should let me try. You have no chance. I naturally have my reasons for being able to arrive here. The figure of light shook its head. If you step in, the spirit of poison will seize your body and use your mortal body to escape my suppression. The reason it has been trapped for so long is because its main body is too large. Thus it can't escape, Chinyu earnestly said. Even if I don't go in, how long can you last? 10 years or 100 years? This is only a short period of time, so why not let me try? Believe me, I really don't fear the spirit of poison. On the blurry face of the figure of light, a pair of eyes suddenly brightened. It looked at Chinyu for a moment and then said, "Okay." This time, Chinyu was stunned. Although he knew it was stupid to ask this, he still couldn't help it. "Can you tell me why? You changed your mind so easily." The figure of light lightly said, "My previous master told me that there are no idiots in this world, especially cultivators with profound strength. For you to reach Blue Sea at such a young age, you should be smart. And smart people often won't seek their own death, unless they are too smart." These words were a bit familiar. Chinyu rubbed his nose. "Don't worry. You will soon discover that believing in me is the best decision you have ever made." "I hope so." The figure of light had a deep gaze. "I wish you good luck." Schwa. Chapter 478. 10 years, 100 years. The light figure bitterly smiled. It looked at the black figure, falling to the ground. "I originally wanted to save your life, but since you are willing to sacrifice yourself, I will help you. Let's fight for that nearly non-existent hope." Strong winds rushed into Chinyu's face, pouring into his nose and mouth. He cursed inwardly and quickly adjusted his posture. Then he came into intimate contact with the black land. With a loud explosion, the ground collapsed and countless cracks spread out. Chinyu stood at the bottom of the pit, his entire body numb. It took him a great deal of effort to suppress the tumbling desire in his chest and the desire to vomit blood. This black continent was actually pulling him down on its own initiative. Moreover, what was even more terrifying was that after he passed through the layer of light, his cultivation had entered a frozen state. If it weren't for the demon body being sufficiently powerful, anyone else would have turned into a pile of minced meat. But even if he didn't die now, what followed would be far from good. Without his cultivation, all that was left was his mortal body. Chinyu's complexion changed. This was because he discovered that his feet seemed to be locked to the ground. Did you discover that you can't move at all? Are you feeling fear and despair? At the edge of the pit, the black liquid condensed into a figure. This figure had handsome features and a devilish look in his eyes. He stared at Chinyu with interest. Chinyu was panic-stricken. You, who are you?" The handsome spirit of poison laughed frivolously. "Stop pretending. If you didn't have the permission of that fellow outside, someone as insignificant as you wouldn't be able to come here." His eyes flashed. "What secrets are you hiding on your body? Could it be that fellow outside thinks you can harm me?" Chinyu's complexion paled. "I never thought that my disguise would be seen through by you. If you know what's good for you, then hurry up and let me go. Otherwise, you won't be able to bear the consequences." The spirit of poison was stunned. He didn't think that his casual bluff would actually cause him to speak the truth. But as he looked at Chinyu several more times, he couldn't help but laugh. This boy's expression wasn't bad, but the corners of his eyes were clearly twitching. His tense body and feigned fierce eyes were full of holes. He lifted a hand, and black liquid flowed between his fingers. "Tell me the truth. Otherwise, do you believe me when I say that the moment my hand falls, you will immediately dissolve into a pile of meat paste?" His fingers slowly approached. Chinyu's eyes twitched even more, and he suddenly cried out in panic, "No! Don't kill me. I was just walking when I suddenly came here. I don't even know where I am." The spirit of poison frowned. He thought for a moment and then coldly sneered. "I don't care where you came from. Since you've come here, then stay here and wait for death. I don't want to waste my strength on you." He took a step backwards, and his body melted into the earth, vanishing from sight. Qin Yu's tense body relaxed, and he gasped for breath. His eyes swept around in a daze, as if he wanted to cry but had no tears. Of course, all of this was a disguise. This was because, from the very first glance, Qin Yu discovered that the seemingly cruel and crazy spirit of poison was actually extremely difficult to deal with. What happened next confirmed his conjecture. This fellow was cunning and strange. He obviously desired to possess his body and obtain a chance to escape, but he was actually able to suppress his desire. However, the spirit of poison was still tempted. Otherwise, he could have just killed Qin Yu directly. Why would he leave him here to fend for himself? Clearly, it still had its doubts and was still observing. Since he was sure that the spirit of poison was secretly spying on him through some unknown method, Qin Yu naturally had to put on a complete act. Thus he panicked and restless. He tried countless methods to escape, but he still couldn't break free from the imprisonment of the Black Earth. When he discovered that faint traces of poison had begun to drill into his body, his face was filled with panic and despair. Qin Yu couldn't help but praise himself. After struggling for a long time, he finally couldn't hold on any longer. His eyes dimmed and he slumped to the ground, as if he had accepted his fate and waited for death to arrive. During this entire process, it wasn't just the spirit of poison that was secretly observing, but also the spirit of the sealed pagoda above him. The light phantom seemed to arch an eyebrow, a strange look in its eyes, but it couldn't help but feel a bit of anticipation. Perhaps he really could succeed? The black dot on the sealed pagoda had already rushed through the central region and arrived near the tip. But just as it was about to enter the tip, it finally came to a stop. The small square was filled with the sound of exhalation. It had been such a long time, and even though there were only several people, it gave off a surging feeling. But at this time, no one had the mind to care about this at all. They rubbed their sore eyes, their hearts filled with apprehension. Without accident, Yao Bin should be undergoing the final test right now. If he succeeded, he would become the master of the sealed pagoda. The 13th branch of the demonic path, the myriad poison sect, would be re-established, and he would become one of the strongest powerhouses in the world. In terms of their hearts, whether it was because of the dark side of human nature or because the treasures belonged to the black demon sect, none of them hoped that Yao Bin would succeed. But these thoughts lingered in their hearts. They couldn't say them out loud. This was because everyone was well aware that the sect master needed to borrow Yao Bin's hand to resolve the hidden dangers in his body. If he failed in the process of recognizing a master, all that awaited him was death. This was a result that the sect master didn't want to see. Tai Qianqiu was expressionless, but deep in his heart he was shaking. From the moment Yao Bin entered the sealed pagoda, he had felt that things had spiraled out of his control. But as he watched helplessly on as Yao Bin rushed all the way to the peak of the sealed pagoda, he still found it hard to believe. Before, Tai Qianqiu only had a 50% chance that Yao Bin would be able to resolve his hidden dangers. But now, after witnessing Yao Bin's strength, he was at least 80% sure he would succeed. He suddenly felt a bit of regret. Perhaps if his methods had been a bit gentler and he hadn't forced Yao Bin too much, things wouldn't have reached this step. But now it was clearly too late. Looking at the peak of the sealed pagoda and the black that had stopped for a long time, Tai Qianqiu had an incomparably complex look in his eyes. Should he hope that Yao Bin would succeed or fail? The spirit of poison was certain that the human that had rushed and had been completely corroded by poison. His aura was weakening, and his life fluctuations were becoming increasingly low. Without accident, he would soon die. Then his body would rot and dissolve before being absorbed by the earth, becoming a part of his body. But This wasn't a result that he wanted to see. Since many years ago, the spirit of the sealed pagoda had been in a half-dead state. But even now it was still perfectly fine, still suppressing the spirit of poison. The spirit of poison knew that there would be a day when he would be able to escape, but he wasn't sure when that day would come. Since the birth of his will, tens of thousands of years had passed. After being imprisoned for such a long time, the spirit of poison's heart had grown increasingly cruel. The spirit of poison's desire for freedom had already surpassed everything else. But he was still cautious and chose to temporarily wait and see. This was because in the spirit of poison's understanding, there had never been a single flaw in the sealed pagoda that he could use. But now, the spirit of poison was well aware that he had to make a decision. Should he watch this human die, or should he immediately seize his body and rush out of the imprisonment of the sealed pagoda? At the bottom of the pit, Qin Yu was barely breathing. His soul space was completely clean, without a single trace of poison able to corrode it. As for his mortal body, he only needed a single thought to swallow up all the poison. With the powerful regenerative abilities of the demon body, he would soon be able to recover. So, although this situation seemed terrifying, the truth was that it didn't harm Qin Yu too much. He was waiting for the spirit of poison to seize his body. Without warning, a black liquid gushed out from the bottom of the pit, instantly submerging Qin Yu. Endless black energy crazily seeped into Qin Yu's body. The seizing had begun. In the end, the spirit of poison wasn't able to suppress the desire for freedom in his heart. Moreover, he couldn't feel any threatening aura from this dying human. Perhaps the spirit of the sealed pagoda had prepared some scheme, but the spirit of poison didn't fear it. One was like the sun high in the sky, and the other was like a dying sun. The disparity between the two wasn't something that could be filled with schemes. Thus, the spirit of poison attacked. Once he started, he wouldn't look back. He wanted to complete control of this mortal body in the shortest time possible, and then use his absolute strength to crush the sealed pagoda scheme. Everything proceeded smoothly. This mortal body was filled with poison and was extremely suitable for the spirit of poison to fuse with. The aura of the soul was incomparably weak, like a candle flickering in the cold winter wind, about to be extinguished in the next moment. The spirit of poison smiled. This was normal. Even if he didn't deliberately target it, the aura of poison was enough to cause a life's soul to wither and die. In that case, it would send this lowly, pitiful, and innocent human to death. It would devour his soul and obtain some of his memories. Only then would it be able to perfectly control this fleshly body and walk under the sun in the outside world. Sun, this familiar yet strange word had tumbled through the spirit of poison's heart countless times. Now he finally had the chance to bathe in it. It would surely be extremely warm. Who? A black aura surged into his soul space. Then, in the next moment, an icy cold arrived without warning. The spirit of poison's eyes widened, filled with panic and disbelief. All of his strength had been thoroughly suppressed at this moment. This was impossible. Shua! At the bottom of the pit, Qin Yu opened his eyes and smiled. Nothing is impossible. He stretched out his arms. Since I've invited you to enter my trap, then let's begin. Cracks appeared in the void before collapsing inwards. The phantom of the little blue lamp arrived above Qin Yu's head. The deep blue light was pure and transparent, like the most peak and perfect jade in the world. Its arrival represented the little blue lamp's all-out attack. Bang! The entire black continent that floated deep within the sea of poison suddenly trembled. Then, loud rumbling sounds erupted from deep within the earth. It was like countless thick tentacles were ruthlessly stabbing into the earth, wildly swallowing up the energy contained within. Endless black liquid wildly gathered from all directions. The moment it touched Qin Yu's body, it vanished from sight. His right index finger shined with a dazzling light. Runes began to appear, spreading upwards from his fingertip. No, The spirit of poison crazily roared. His will was born from poison, and he could disperse it at any time and reform it once more. But at this time he had lost control of his will. He could only watch helplessly on as the strength of his main body was crazily sucked away. Rumble, rumble. Chapter 479. The spirit of the sealed pagoda was left dumbfounded. 50,000 years ago, the myriad poison sect had made a mistake, leading to the birth of the spirit of poison. The entire sect had suffered a backlash and was nearly annihilated before they were able to seal it in the sealed pagoda. Ever since then, the spirit of the sealed pagoda had been resisting it. Although it had suppressed the spirit of poison to this day, it was well aware of just how terrifying it was. Unlike the spirit of poison, whose strength continued to weaken with the passage of time, the spirit of poison's strength had been in a constant state of growth for tens of thousands of years. This was because to the spirit of poison, all of the poisons within the sealed pagoda were nourishment for its growth. Yet, it was precisely this terrifying spirit of poison that would cause a great calamity once it escaped. Yet, today, it was actually defeated by an unremarkable little fellow. To the spirit of the sealed pagoda, this created an intense psychological impact. Its entire mind was in chaos. It had decided to go all out, but in the end it was useless. The spirit of poison, how did he get defeated? It wasn't just the spirit of the sealed pagoda that couldn't understand this. Even the spirit of poison that was desperately trying to steal his strength was shocked and enraged, completely confused. I was born from millions upon millions of poisons, and I inherited the destructive energy of heaven and earth. I will exercise the power of destruction, making all creatures in the world howl in grief. This is my destiny. But just as this poison spirit was born, a group of old bastards risked their lives to seal it. Then another group of people unafraid of death sent it into the sealed pagoda, where it was imprisoned for tens of thousands of years. Wasn't he supposed to carry the destructive aura of heaven and earth? What about exercising the power of destruction? What happened to making all living beings in the world wail in pain? Motherf asterisk cur. All right, the great Tao of heaven and earth still lacked one. Everything had its leeway and accidents. Even if the poison spirit was extremely unlucky and happened to encounter that one, tens of thousands of years of imprisonment and suppression should be enough, right? Just as he was about to escape, a human lad suddenly ran in. He looked around and did not seem to be a threat at all. This poison spirit was very cautious, but even so, he still fell into a trap. Was there any justice in this world? Are you going to let this poison be nimble? Could it be that my birth wasn't to punish all living beings in the world, but to bear the burden of endless sin and struggle and pain? Heaven and earth, are you king blind? However, the spirit of poison quickly stopped roaring in his heart. This was because he discovered, to his horror, that a tenth of the poison that he had accumulated for tens of thousands of years had disappeared in a short period of time. Originally, he thought that his family's foundation was extremely deep, and if this kid devoured too much, he might just poison himself to death at any moment. Now, it didn't seem to be the case at all, and what terrified the spirit of poison the most was that this body's devouring speed didn't show any signs of slowing down. Could it be that he really wanted to swallow the spirit of poison whole? As this thought crossed his mind, the spirit of poison was dumbfounded. The evil spirit was originally suppressed by the heavens and earth, and it could not be born without a lucky coincidence. Only after it developed its own intelligence did it realize how difficult it was for it to appear. After being imprisoned for tens of thousands of years and being swallowed in a single day, how could the spirit of poison be willing to end up like this? Don't panic. As the saying goes, calamities live for 1,000 years. I, the poison spirit, am a calamity to heaven and earth. I will not die so easily. The spirit of poison's thoughts raced, and he quickly judged the current situation. Right now, there are only two paths in front of me. I can either surrender and beg for my life, or I can give it my all. This human boy is sinister and cunning, and his thoughts are incomparably vicious. Since I have fallen into his hands, I am nothing more than a fish on the chopping block. How could he let me off so easily? It seems that there is only the second path. The spirit of Poison's face was fierce and his eyes were crazed. Don't you want to swallow me? Fine, then I will fulfill your wish. Let's see whether or not you have the appetite. Although he couldn't escape this mortal body, the spirit of Poison still had a connection with his main body. At this time, as the spirit of Poison went crazy, the black continent in the sea of poison began to tremble and twitch as if it were suffering from an epileptic fit. Rumble, rumble. The black continent collapsed and disintegrated. Endless black liquid surged out like a raging flood, gathering from all directions. In several blinks of an eye, it formed a black lake. The spirit of the sealed pagoda was panicked. It naturally understood that the spirit of Poison was going all out, wanting to use endless poison to break through Qin Yu's swallowing ability. Once it succeeded, not only would it be able to escape its predicament, but it would even be able to take over Qin Yu's body and control the mysterious strength within him. With Qin Yu's cultivation, the reason he could restrain and suppress the spirit of Poison was because he borrowed the strength of an external object. The spirit of the sealed pagoda didn't know what this external strength was, but it was well aware that once it obtained the spirit of Poison, it would be like adding wings to a tiger. The consequences would be inconceivable. No, it had to help Qin Yu. It couldn't allow the spirit of Poison to succeed. The light phantom formed by the spirit of the sealed pagoda hesitated for a moment. But in the next moment, this hesitation turned into determination. Its mission had always been to protect all life in the world. For this reason, it didn't hesitate to use its body as a sacrifice to suppress all poisons in the world. Today, for the sake of trillions of lives, what did it matter if it gave up its freedom? It lifted a hand and pointed between its eyebrows. The light phantom trembled, and a rhombus crystal flew out. This crystal was formed from countless tiny facets and edges. It emitted a radiant divine light, and as it was refracted by these facets, it was beautiful to the point of being unimaginable. The spirit of the sealed pagoda took a deep breath. It pointed a finger downwards, and the rhombus crystal shot out like an arrow. It pierced through the layer of sealing light and shot straight towards the lake of black liquid. At this moment, the suppressed spirit of Poison suddenly sensed something. Its eyes widened in disbelief, and it emitted an angry roar. Bang! With this roar, the entire lake of black liquid began to violently tumble about. The surface of the lake split open like a giant mouth that swallowed up the crystal. But this black liquid contained countless poisons, each drop able to kill thousands of lives. In front of this crystal, it was as fragile as true flowing water. With a dull sound, the mouth formed by the black liquid was directly pierced through by the crystal. It tore through the air, constantly emitting sounds similar to the sound of leather being torn apart. It was deep and heavy, carrying with it an indomitable momentum that shook the heart. The light phantom had a complex expression. Don't disappoint me, whoosh. The crystal arrived between Qin Yu's eyebrows. Without hesitation, it fused into his flesh and blood, vanishing from sight. In the next moment, the crystal appeared in his soul space. The purple moon began to shine with a blinding light, a halo of purple light spreading out in all directions. The slumbering soul summoning bell also instinctively began to shake. Ringing sounds that only the soul could hear constantly reverberated through the air. Qin Yu was frightened. He thought that this was one of the spirit of Poison's other killing moves. If the mysterious purple moon and soul-summoning bell were able to cause such a great commotion at the same time, it must be terrifying. But he soon discovered that although the purple moon shined brightly and the soul-summoning bell rang without end, they didn't attack at all. Rather, they were like peacocks spreading their tails. This wasn't the right way to put it. This was because Qin Yu clearly wasn't the one who could cause them to spread their tails. It was more accurate to say that the purple moon and soul summoning bell felt a threat from this crystal. They instinctively released their might to warn others that they weren't to be trifled with. This left Qin Yu pleasantly surprised. The origins of the purple moon were a mystery, but he was well aware of how precious the soul summoning bell was. It seemed that this crystal was in existence on the same level as the soul summoning bell. But how could such a precious treasure appear in his soul space for no reason? After a moment of hesitation, Qin Yu's soul reached out a hand. Without any resistance, the crystal fell into his palm. In an instant, the aura of his soul was branded into the crystal. Then, countless pieces of information flowed into his mind from the crystal. This information was so vast that even with Qin Yu's current soul cultivation, he felt his head spin. It took him a long time to recover. Qin Yu shook his head and rubbed between his eyebrows. He looked through the information that entered his mind, and a look of astonishment flashed on his face. Then it turned into pleasant surprise. This was truly an unexpected harvest. The information that came from the crystal could be called an incomparably long memory. From the moment he was born, it continued until today. This was the memory of the sealed pagoda. Looking at the crystal in his hand, Qin Yu's eyes brightened. He hadn't even taken the spirit of poison yet, but he never imagined that his goal this time would already be achieved. The sealed pagoda had taken the initiative to recognize a master, and to be more accurate, since the birth of the sealed pagoda, this was the first time that it had truly recognized a master. This was the so-called supreme inherited treasure of the Myriad Poison Sect. Strictly speaking, for countless years, the Myriad Poison Sect had only obtained the approval of the sealed pagoda to be able to use its strength. Both sides had a relationship of equals, and the sealed pagoda even had the initiative. But now, it had chosen to serve Qin Yu as its master on its own initiative. Of course, through the memories of the sealed pagoda, Qin Yu easily knew what the true reason for doing this was. Thus, while he was pleasantly surprised, he didn't feel any pride at all. Rather, there was only admiration. Sealed pagoda, so you were such a sealed pagoda. Sealed pagoda, I know you can hear me. Qin Yu, guarantee you that I will not use the power of the sealed pagoda to do anything that goes against the will of the heavens and earth. Otherwise, you can break all ties with me. The sealed pagoda's spirit's voice echoed out. I hope you can keep your word. Otherwise, even if I vanish from the world, I will not back down. Qin Yu knew its memories, so he knew that these weren't empty words. If the sealed pagoda said these words, then it would surely do them. But his reply didn't contain any hesitation. Of course, I will wait and see. The sealed pagoda went straight to the point. Now, I will mobilize all of my strength and pour it into your body to help you suppress the strength of the spirit of poison. The crystal shined, but in the next moment, it was stopped by Qin Yu. He coughed and rubbed his nose. In truth, even if the spirit of poison tries to go all out, it's useless to me. Facts spoke louder than words. Qin Yu relaxed his mind and allowed the sealed pagoda's spirit to sense his current state. As for the little blue lamp, although he didn't know how it did it, whether it was his partner soul spirity undying or the sealed pagoda spirit, none of them were able to sense its existence. The sealed pagoda fell into a long silence. After a long time, it said with a bit of hesitation, "Myriad poison body?" Qin Yu thought about it. There were records of a terrifying physique that could swallow myriad poisons and eat them as food. He nodded. You can also understand it that way. The sealed pagoda fell silent once more. Qin Yu knew that Qin Shu and the sealed pagoda were depressed right now. They originally held onto the lofty ideal of rescuing the common people of the world and sacrifice themselves. But who would have thought that in the end, it would all be superfluous and he wouldn't even have a chance to do anything? In other words, he had sacrificed himself for nothing. If you don't want to, I can try to undo our master recognition relationship. Cough, cough. I know it might be a bit difficult, but if we try it a bit more, perhaps one day we will be able to." The sealed pagoda quietly said, "If you hadn't looked through my memories and said these words, I might have been moved. But you clearly know that once I recognize a master, I will no longer have any chance of freedom. These words are a bit too shameless." Qin Yu was embarrassed to the max, but he thickened his skin and didn't speak, as if he were tacitly agreeing. What nonsense! The treasure had already been delivered to him, and he had already eaten it. Not to mention that he really couldn't undo the master recognition relationship. But even if he could, did he really have to spit it out? That was purely a fairy tale. "I am tired. I will leave the rest to you." After the sealed pagoda finished speaking, there was no more movement. It was clear that it had gone to lick away the sorrow in its heart. Qin Yu naturally didn't have any objections. He had taken all the advantages, so how could he not allow the sealed pagoda to have a little bit of emotion? In any case, the rice had already been cooked into porridge. There would come a time when it would accept reality. Originally, he thought that he would be able to control the sealed pagoda and become the true master of the myriad poison sect, obtaining a status that the Black Demon sect had no choice but to treat with respect, and then he would be able to participate in the Demon Ascension Gate. But in reality, his harvests were unimaginably great. The sealed pagoda that had already recognized him as its master was extremely depressed. There was no need to mention the spirit of myriad poison who was being tossed and turned by Qin Yu as he used the star-absorbing great art over and over again.